Hello, everyone. I'm the person who made the page. Okay, so we have a Michael Jordan fan who wants to go on. He's from YouTube. He goes by the YouTube username of Sean. He has Michael Jordan as the number one NBA player of all time, and he would like to explain why Michael Jordan is the number one NBA player of all time. So, let me put him on. Hey, welcome to the program.
Hi. So, let me start off by saying this. I am a sports fan, first and foremost, and basketball happens to be my favorite sport. Been watching basketball for decades. I loved it since I was a kid. Growing up during the 80s and the 90s, seeing all the different changes in the NBA, the one player who embodied everything about being a champion and about doing things in a way that he overcame obstacles. That was Michael Jordan in my eyes. Michael Jordan and Larry Bird were my two favorite players. Michael Jordan was the greatest player I've ever seen.
But are you saying Michael Jordan was the only one who embodied all that?
No, he wasn't the only one. No, not at all. There were a lot of players that embodied those particular characteristics. But Jordan did it in a way that was, first off, it hadn't been seen in the NBA at that point.
Well, that's not true. That's not true.
His play style. Well, sure it is.
Well, there were players I'll list it for you. There were players who were similar to him, and they've seen players like that before. For example, Elgin Baylor was one, Connie Hawkins was two, Dr. J was three, and there are more examples, but you get the point.
I see where you're going with it, but that's not actually true. So you're talking about Dr. J, Connie Hawkins, and Elgin Baylor. They were all fantastic players. Take nothing away from any of them.
But
the thing that separated Michael Jordan from any of those players was Jordan was dominant on both sides of the ball. Number one.
Well, actually, hang on. When you say dominant on both sides of the ball, there's some problems here. He played offense and defense. I don't know if he dominated on defense, but even if you say he did, the other players also dominated on offense and defense.
Not to the degree he did. He was the first one. I mean, all you have to do is look at the numbers. Go back and look at the history of the game. The way it was played. I mean, the guy was the defensive player of the year.
That's not numbers. That's an award.
Absolutely, but it's based off of numbers. 200 blocks, 200 steals, 100 blocks on the season for a guard.
Well, how was if that's the case, if that's one of the reasons they're voting for him because of those numbers, how are some of these other players going to get the awards because they weren't keeping records of some of those numbers?
And that brings me to another point. You're absolutely correct. The ABA and the NBA merger happened in '76. So a lot of the numbers that you're referring to happened at a time when half of the best players in the country weren't even allowed to play.
Well, first of all, I wasn't referring to any numbers. But if you're going to bring that argument, look, they weren't even there. I could bring up the same kind of thing with you and say a lot of the best players in the world weren't even there when Michael Jordan was in the NBA.
Like who? Everybody who was good enough to be in the NBA in the '80s was in the NBA.
How do you know?
Because the league was open then. It was the ABA-NBA merger. It was the league.
There's plenty of players. There's plenty of players who couldn't make the NBA for various reasons. For example,
I got nothing to do with it.
Say it again.
That is not an excuse. I don't want to hear that. If you were talented enough to get to the NBA and you didn't get there for whatever reason, I can't. That doesn't count. I don't know what to tell you about that one.
No, it doesn't count.
That's a woulda, shoulda, coulda kind of thing.
Well, first of all, you've also done some kind of woulda, shoulda, coulda things. But if you're going to give that argument, okay, I'll go with that. If you're going to say that doesn't count. Well, just because it doesn't count to you doesn't mean it doesn't count. People can't make the NBA for various reasons.
Absolutely.
But they still exist. So if you're going to say, yes. I know you didn't say these exact words, so I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but when you basically say the reason those players in the past are not on that level is because they played in a time where the best players weren't always there, you have to be consistent and now say the same thing about Michael Jordan's time. I don't even think it's a good argument, but if you're going to give that argument, you got to be consistent if you're going to be fair.
Well, it wasn't really an argument. It's the truth. It is what it is. I mean, if you have two, it's part of the discussion. I'm not really arguing it because you have an opinion on it, and that's fine. It's not going to change my mind because the ABA and the NBA. Well, let me say this. But you said something
else. But you said something else. We're getting into the semantics if it's an argument or not. You made your point about that part. It's part of your argument, right? So I'm following up to that.
Yes, that's fine. For the sake of keeping the conversation flowing, I'm cool with that.
Well, you can tell me if I'm wrong. It's okay.
No, I'm not. No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you believe what you believe. No. And my point is,
no, that's not true. I haven't given you any beliefs.
That's fine. Okay. That's fine.
But I could say the same thing to you. I could say you believe what you believe. You know that.
I do believe what I believe, and I wouldn't argue that at all. I tell you, you're absolutely correct. I think everybody has an opinion, and they believe what they believe. That's how humans are.
But that's fine. But that only applies to when beliefs and opinions are okay to go by beliefs and opinions. But when you don't have to go by beliefs and opinions, and you can go by facts, logic, reason, and common sense, then you shouldn't act like, one, you want to go by beliefs and opinions, and two, that you're right and someone's wrong because of your beliefs and opinions.
Agreed. That's why I never said you were wrong. I just told you I don't believe it. that doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means it's something you're saying that I don't believe. No, I thought
let me address that. I thought you might say that. I thought you might say that. And I get that. But to be fair, it's pretty clear you disagree with me. So you may not say I'm wrong, but it's obvious you're not on the same. At the very least, you're not on the same page. You do disagree. But again, it goes back to why go by beliefs and opinions when you can actually go by the information and be consistent.
Because, well, then give what information are you? I know one guy won the Defensive Player of the Year. The other ones didn't. That's basically how that works.
Like I mentioned earlier. So one of the arguments, and there's many problems with going by awards. Many. If I go into all the reasons, it wouldn't be fair to you because I want to give you time to follow up. But one of the problems is that's voting. Just because someone gets voted for an award doesn't mean they're better than somebody.
I can go along with that to a degree, for sure.
No, not to a degree. If you're going to say to a degree, then again, you got to be consistent. Now you have to, well, you don't have to, but if you want to be consistent, then at this point, you're going to have to say every award ever given in the history of the NBA or other sports or movies or anything that has awards, you always have to say that one, you agree with all of them, and two, that they always got it right.
Okay.
But you're not going to, but you wouldn't, understandably, you wouldn't do that because that would be ridiculous. So then that means the question becomes, why cherry pick when you want to go by awards and when you don't?
Because in this particular case, everything that supports what he did and what he won, you can't argue with.
You can.
So the first,
you believe it.
Well, you can argue with it, and you're more than welcome to argue with it. But again, the NBA and the ABA merged, so you have a bigger collection of great players who are allowed to play. That's number one. Number two, Jordan played at a time when a wing player, mind you, the NBA during that time was based on having a big. Most people didn't believe.
We already got some problems here, so we got lots of pack. So there's three problems here. Number one, when you said, I don't have your exact words, don't quote me, but when you said something like, everything shows it's true, that's not true. You believe that. Number two, which you already acknowledged, you said you can't argue it. You can, and you acknowledge that. Number three, when you said the part about, again, I'm not trying to quote your exact words, but you said something like, thanks. You said something like, a small guy never led the way to win a ring and all that stuff.
I didn't say that. That's not what I said.
No, weren't you implying that this is the first time someone?
No, I wasn't implying. I was telling you, but I didn't have a chance to finish that particular point.
But hang on, that's not fair. No, that's not fair.
No, it is fair, and I will tell you. No, hold on, wait a minute. I'm on your show. Let me say what I need to say right here, and then we'll move forward.
That's not how it works.
I understand. Okay, but once I say this, maybe it'll give you a little more clarity on where I'm coming from.
Well, first of all, there was a little pause in what you said, but even if you were not finished, you said enough for me to know I know where he's going with this. Now, if I'm wrong, you can show me how I'm wrong, but I still want to understand what you said first. But you don't have to say I didn't get to finish and all that, because you're saying lots of multiple points, and if I wait for everything, we're going to have a court session where we each take turns for long points. So, for example, let's say you only give me 4 points. Okay, only 4, and that's not a lot. But let's say each of your points has 8 problems. That means 8 times 4 is 32. So now you have to wait for me to finish 32 points. It's not going to work.
Well, then I'll give you 1 point at a time, then, and you can debunk it or whatever you're trying to do with it after that is fine.
You can give me more than one. No, you can give me more than one. I'm not strict, but I hope you don't. But I hope you don't start saying you didn't let me finish and all that.
Okay, I won't say that anymore. I know you brought it up before, so that won't be said anymore. That's a done deal as far as that one goes.
Okay, so let's clarify what you said. So you were saying it was the first time that ever happened. I thought I knew what you meant, but if you think I'm wrong, please tell me what you meant.
What I'm saying is the NBA during that time, the era of basketball, was a big man game.
So I got it right. I got it right. I was right. You were basically trying to make the point that at that time, big men were usually the ones who led the way, and it was rare for a guard to lead the way for a ring, right?
It was very rare. It happened, but it was still rare.
Okay, so did I get it right? I assumed right.
You got part of it right, but the other part, that whole conversation is there were other guards who also were successful, but they typically had a dominant big with them.
Okay,
or they had a collection of dominant bigs with them. They had more of a front court presence.
No, that's fine. So you had
the Bulls didn't have that.
No, I understand. You had more to the story. That's fine. So, but let's go one at a time here. So first, he wasn't the first. So I think you know that. Yeah, I think you know that. Okay. So you're saying he was the first, but he didn't have a dominant big guard. There's a lot of problems with this argument. Again, to be fair to you, so you have time, I won't give you all the arguments. I'll just keep it simple. First of all, you don't have to have a big guy to win. You don't have to have a good guard to win or a good point guard, whatever. You just have to have a number of things come to play. What you're doing is, and many Michael Jordan fans do this, you simplify it too much and go, look at what he had, look at what everyone else had, and Michael Jordan somehow did something better than everyone. To give you a quick example of what I mean, I'll give you a quick example. Michael Jordan doesn't have a dominant big guy. So that means you're trying to say Michael Jordan did something that other people did not do. And so I'd like to understand when the Bulls score 100 points and Michael Jordan gets 30 points and he gets 6 rebounds and 3 steals and all that, what is he doing that's so different from every other player who can score 30 points and get 6 rebounds and 2 steals and all that? Why is he the difference and all the other stars couldn't make it happen? Remember, the Bulls score 100, he scores 30 and so on. What's he doing? Why is he different?
He's different because of the leadership and the confidence he's instilling in the other players. I mean, that's kind of easy to explain when you look at the rosters that he was playing with. Only in
the minds of Michael Jordan fans. It's actually not easy.
That's fine. That's fine. So for example, any other fan base who is trying to take away from Michael Jordan, they tend to do kind of similar to what you're doing.
Right, and that's fine. And that's okay.
That's cool. But this is how we grow. This is how we exchange information. I'm cool with that.
But no one's taking away from, well, some people are taking away from him, to be fair, but most people who are questioning him, they're not taking away from him. They're just not elevating him to the level that you're doing it. So, for example,
some people.
Sure. No, I know. That's what I'm saying. So, yes. No.
You said most.
Yeah, most.
The words matter. You said most. There's some people. Very few, actually, but there's some.
No, I thought you meant most. I thought you meant some for the other part. Some people are taken away. Most are not. Most people are not. Now, if you want, we can get into that later. But for right now, let's just keep it at this. When you say he was a great, again, I'm not quoting your exact words, okay? So don't worry.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, thanks. But when you basically imply he was a good leader, and when you basically imply that he made everyone better, there's a lot of problems with this, but I'll just give you 2 simple ones. So again, you have time to follow up. One, lots of people are great leaders, and lots of people can make their teammates better. And before you say he did it better than them, lots of them were just as good or better than him. Number 2, when you say he was a great leader and he made everyone better, this depends who you ask, because I can assure you there's probably more people who would say he's not a great leader and he didn't make everyone better.
Well, what do you think? You don't think he was a great leader?
I'll give you 2 answers. In order for me to know, I'd have to be there in the locker room and interact with him and play with him all that, but I don't know. All I can do is go by 2 things. What does he show in his personality, and what do people say about him? Based on the tons of interviews that I've played of his teammates, his opponents, his coaches, and all that, I can assure you, based on many, and what he shows in his personality, he was a terrible leader and a terrible team player and a ball hog and a jerk.
what he showed in his interviews was that he was absolutely a jerk. You don't get to that level now. There's a lot of people who are jerks who are great leaders. That really doesn't even matter.
That's not true.
If you're talking about, it is very true, because the reason why it doesn't matter is because the results, man. You're talking about you're making a point about a person's personality. That ain't got nothing to do with leadership.
Well, then,
everybody doesn't lead the same way. Hold on. Everybody doesn't lead the same way.
Wait, you're telling me a lot of things you believe. If these are your beliefs,
absolutely.
I can't tell you that you're wrong or right all the time because these are your beliefs. You can just say, in my belief, there's a zebra flying around in space.
But it's true, though.
But hang on. Let me when you say personality has nothing to do with leadership, I've never heard any human being say that ever.
When is personality ever? You have some people who are more personable and that are easygoing and lead that way, and there's different ways to lead.
Right. That
in Michael Jordan's case, absolutely. But in Michael Jordan's case, he decided to be a hard ass, and it worked. Okay. So you can't say his way wasn't right.
Well, I can, and I'll show you how. But let's get to the first one. Okay. When you say leadership has nothing to do with personality, that's something you made up. That's just something like someone saying rebounding has nothing to do with hustle. You're just making up something that makes no sense. But if
you're fixated on that point, I just sat here and told you that there are different ways to lead.
I'm getting to that. I'm going to that. I'm going one at a time.
All right.
And I agreed with you. I don't know if you forgot. I agreed with you.
I know. I don't know why you brought that back up again. I thought we had already gotten past that. But okay.
Because just because there's different ways to lead doesn't mean that personality has nothing to do with leadership. So you may disagree with me that personality is linked to leadership, but that doesn't mean I'm going to then just disagree with you that there's different ways to lead. You can lead in different ways. We agree on that part. Now, the third part you said, which I kind of forgot now, I think you were saying basically about how the results. This goes back to this. There's a lot of things wrong with this argument. Again, I got to just shorten it up so I'll give you time to follow up. There's many problems with this argument. I'll just give you two arguments. One guy is not going to do anything to make a team win. It's impossible for a guy to make a team win. It goes back to this mentality that you guys have where one guy is the difference maker. He won a ring. He made everyone better and all that. And number two, if you really believe I'm wrong and that a guy can do all that, you have to explain to me logically why all the different people who lead in different ways, who are jerks, as you said, some people are jerks. I don't have the exact words. Some are nice, some lead by example and all that. How come they couldn't do it? So that means Michael Jordan did something that no one else could do. And I'd like to know, not in your beliefs what he did. I want to know factually what he did. So again, the Bulls score 100 points. He scores 30. He gets some rebounds, gets some steals. What's the difference between his 30 points, his 6 rebounds, his 3 steals and all that makes his team win, but other people couldn't do that?
It's the roster. And let me explain to you this way. If Michael Jordan scores 30 points for the Bulls, the rest of the points come from the rest of his teammates.
Right.
So the teammates that he has, Scottie Pippen, I'm talking about when they started to actually win. You're talking about Pippen and Horace Grant and Craig Hodges and Paxson and all these other guys. The next closest player to his 30 points is probably 14, 15, 16 points from Scottie Pippen.
You're factually wrong. That's not true.
All right.
So
that's fine. That's fine. Just let me finish this point, and then you can go ahead.
Why don't you want to go? I thought you said earlier you want to go one at a time, so we don't have too many and all that. If you don't want to, you can go ahead.
But you're asking me to explain to you how Michael Jordan's 30 points matters so much. The Bulls scored 100.
And you explained a lot of things right now that have a lot of problems.
Okay, well then go ahead and go into the ones that you have a problem with.
Okay, sure. So I mean, if you don't want to, we don't have to. We could just wait for you to finish, and then we'll just roll our dice and figure out if we get everything. It doesn't seem like you're too happy more than once now.
I'm absolutely fine. I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so I know you said when they started winning. That was a kind of a good move that you did there because now we don't have to count the years when they're not winning. But I want to know, why don't we count the years when they're not winning? And also, what do you count as winning? Because before he won the rings, they were winning, they were above 500, getting into the playoffs and giving people the business. So when did you decide this is when it counts as winning? Number two, if you're going to go by all the years, which I know you didn't. I know you said you're going to go by the winning years. But if you want to be fair and go by all the years, he had people score way more than 14, 15 points multiple times. He had Hall of Famers. He had help. The only people that believe that he had no help, no All-Stars, no Hall of Famers, everybody had a super team except him, are you Michael Jordan fans?
What Hall of Famers did he have in the early parts of his career. And please don't tell me George Gervin. He was at the end of his career at that point.
Okay,
I mean, who else was on the Bulls team?
Okay, so then if that's a good question. And I'm not saying you did this, so don't think I'm accusing you of doing this. But I'm pretty sure when other people say Magic had a super team, Kareem had a super team, Bird had a super team and all that, you don't say, well, Bill Walton was on the bench, or this guy, Pete Maravich, didn't get that many minutes. You guys just count everyone like they're all in their prime, but you don't do it with the Bulls.
You're talking about Bill Walton. But what about the rest of that roster? With Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, and Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish.
No, you missed my point.
I've never ever said, you've never heard me say, and I've never said this to anybody. I never said that the Lakers and Celtics or anybody had super teams. Super teams weren't necessarily the thing back then.
I know you did. I clearly said I know you didn't say it. I never accused you of saying it. But I
just wanted to make sure. That's all.
No, it's fine. But I have to make sure. You and I both know in the NBA world, lots of people are always bringing up super teams about lots of teams. And I have to assume, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I will admit I'm wrong. I have to assume that when you type on YouTube or you make videos or you talk to people in person and all that, you don't question them the same way you would say, hey, George Gervin was older and on the bench. I know you didn't say that exactly, but you're implying, I know you're going to go in that direction. You don't say the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, he was. But you don't say the same thing about everyone else who goes super team. So if that's true, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if that's true and you don't question all the people who do this, then the question becomes, why with every other super team do you guys always just say super team period, but then with the Bulls you guys go, we can't count this guy, we can't count this guy, we can't count this guy, we can't count that guy, this guy?
Well, we don't do that. I can't speak for anybody else. I'm my own person. I don't talk like that.
Okay.
I never said anything. The super team thing for me, in my opinion, this is where I am with the super team thing. Teams have always been putting super teams together. The Celtics back in the 60s were a super team. The Lakers had a super team for a minute. Everybody has tried, the GM has tried to put super teams together.
Right,
my issue with super teams was player driven. That's where I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Right? Get on the phone and call somebody.
The only time, well, this is going to go to a new topic, and I want to get to that, but if you can remember this one so we don't forget it, because I want to go back to something else you said then. I remember, again, I don't know what you do in your history, but I have no reason to believe that when people type online or when people talk to you in person or they make a video or you make a video, whatever, and they're always saying how Michael Jordan had no Hall of Famers, no All-Stars, no help and all that, and Magic and Bird and Kareem and everybody else had all that, I'm almost 100% sure you don't question all of them. So it becomes a lack of consistency. I don't mean you literally have to question everybody, waste your time, but I'm saying as a general rule, you don't question them. And it shows a pattern. The pattern is everybody else is questioned for having a so-called super team, especially if it's player-driven. But when it's Michael Jordan having help or a super team or it's player-driven, whatever, he just gets a pass like he did nothing and everything he just worked on because he was like a mule carrying everybody and everyone else was like spare parts. It's a weird mindset that no one else does except Michael Jordan fans. And I want to point out earlier, when I brought up to you the George Gervin argument, you brought up George Gervin, and I went to Bill Walton. You kind of skipped over that and told me about Danny Ainge and the rest of the roster, but those guys are not all Hall of Famers. You're not counting non-Hall of Famers as super team people, are you?
Dennis Johnson is in the Hall of Fame. Kevin McHale is in the Hall of Fame. Robert Parrish is in the Hall of Fame.
No, but did you hear what I said? Danny Ainge is not in the Hall of Fame. That was one of the guys you brought up.
Absolutely, he was part of the starting five, but there's what 3 or 4 other guys on the team who were, and Larry Bird, they were all Hall of Famers. Right, Jordan played against them in '86 with nobody else as Hall of Famer.
And every team, almost every team that wins championships is going to have Hall of Fame players, including Michael Jordan.
Absolutely, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Michael Jordan not having that kind of help on his team early in his career. I love the early part of Jordan's career because the early part of Jordan's career, he was so dynamic and he was such a good player. He put up great numbers. He was efficient. He did what he could.
Right, I agree.
No one player can win by themselves.
But you say that. You say that, and I agree with you. I'm on your side about everything you said. No disputes. But here's the problem: when you say no one player can win by themselves. And then you imply, I know you didn't say it exactly like this, okay, so don't worry, I'm not putting words in your mouth then. But when you imply He did something that was very rare. He did it with less help. He didn't have all these Hall of Famers and all that. Then you're implying that either he won by himself or he basically did the majority of things.
Well, what didn't he do the majority of?
You really
particularly when you're talking about leadership, and you keep talking. I mean, his leadership style might not appeal to you, but I was fine with his leadership style. I actually thought it was exactly what that team needed.
No, of course you were, because you're into Michael Jordan, so you're not going to question him on anything. But when you
no, that's not true. No. Don't characterize me that way. I'm grown, right? So I'm not just a fan of Michael Jordan. I'm a fan of that era of basketball. And what I am bigger than that is, I prefer a straight-on approach when it comes to leadership. I don't care about this passive-aggressive.
No, you can prefer whatever you want. I would never say your choice of leadership is wrong, but I can tell you, for most human beings, most people want someone who's either nice or positive or motivating in a good way or respectful. No person says, I want to be on a team who's going to punch me in the face and threaten to get me traded and take away my food and be really disrespectful. Most people don't think like that. But whenever I hear someone say, hey, he did a great job and it worked, don't you find it strange that it's such a coincidence it happens to be the people who picked Michael Jordan as a number one NBA player of all time? In other words, how come I can't find any other group of sports fans, Babe Ruth fans, Jerry West fans, Wayne Gretzky fans, Hulk Hogan fans? I can't find anyone else who says, I like that type of person for leadership. It's always you guys.
Who are you talking to?
Give me an example. Which athlete out there?
I'm just asking. So there's been a bunch of players that have been assholes. Lawrence Taylor. I mean, I can go down the list.
You missed what I said. I'm not saying no one was a jerk except Michael Jordan. We know that. We know Kobe Bryant was a jerk. Kevin Garnett was a jerk. Bill Laimbeer was a jerk. We know that. I'm saying when you talk about his leadership is the preferred way for you and it worked, by your logic, you have to explain to me how come the only people who say that are Michael Jordan fans. Why doesn't any other group of fans say this about their Hall of Famer?
No, but you're talking fans across all sports.
Yeah, to make it easier for you.
Fantastic. I'm gonna make this easy for you too. You have not talked to all fans across all sports. Now
I got to correct you. Don't assume something like that about me.
I'm not assuming. Sports is huge. There's no way in the world you talk to fans of every major athlete or every.
Well, no, that's not fair. I never claimed that I literally talked to every human being in the world.
You just sat here and told me that Michael Jordan fans are the only fans you ever run across that have that kind of mindset.
Right.
As far as his leadership, so that's fine. Then keep that. That's the people you ran across.
No, there's a lot of players. That's wrong. That's wrong.
That's fine. There's a lot of players.
Let me explain why it's wrong. I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't want to know. Go ahead.
No, I'm listening. I'm here for you.
We're not talking about a bubble. I'm not talking about three people I met off the street. When you turn on ESPN, Fox Sports, TNT, listen to Associated Press interviews, when you play interviews of players, when you put on anything, people in the park, most people don't say, yeah, I want to play with a guy who's a jerk and rude and treats me like garbage and all that. Most people don't think like that. And not just sports, in the workplace, in government, in movies, nobody thinks like that in general. Now, I'm not saying to you literally no one thinks like that. Maybe you found some weirdo wrestling fans who think like that. You can always find an exception to the rule. But for the most part, most people don't think like that. And definitely the people who usually do are you Michael Jordan fans.
Well, let me ask you. So let me go back to a point you brought up earlier too, because I think this is important.
Sure.
You and I have neither one of us have ever been in the locker room with Michael Jordan, or with the Bulls, or any of those guys. So you really don't know. The only thing you're going by is what you've heard.
I can say the same thing about you.
Quite frankly, absolutely. I'm not saying this. I'm not the one who said that. I'm saying this about what you just said a little while ago.
No, you did have some conclusions. My point
is, my bigger point is. That's fine, I did. But my main point is, because you and I don't have any personal reference to that, all we can do is go by what some people have said. And then the other problem I have with these things that are being said now after all these years, where was this energy back then when they were winning? Everybody wasn't happy. Everybody wasn't happy.
I got you. So we got two problems here. So number one, I just want to remind you, before you even told me that I wasn't in the locker room, I brought that up by myself earlier. I said, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know. I didn't play with him and all that. I acknowledged that.
I know you did. That's why I brought that up.
I know.
That's why I said that.
But
yes.
still, I just find it strange that you would bring it up again because you're trying to say, look, how do you know? When I already told you I don't know. And then I can ask you the same question. I can say, how do you know? When you weren't there, you didn't play with them. You weren't in the locker room.
I don't know. I told you what my preference was. I don't know. I wasn't in there. I like the way he led. I like the way he played.
And I never questioned you on that part. I never said you were wrong to like what you like. In fact, I even told you something like, I don't have the exact words. I said something like, you can like whatever you want. I questioned you. Right. But the difference is, when I don't know and you don't know, I didn't come to a conclusion about what's good and what works. You did. You came to a conclusion like it worked and like as if he did the right thing.
Because you asked me my opinion. That's how I feel about it. That's what I think about it.
But if you weren't there, why would you have an opinion on it?
Because I like the way the guy played. I like the fact that he was straightforward. He wasn't passive aggressive, and the results speak for themselves.
Okay, well then
that era was a little different than this era we live in now.
I know. Everything you're telling me about the era, the super teams, his leadership, these are all Michael Jordan fan 101 things. So let's go one at a time.
Absolutely.
Before we get to today's NBA, let's go one at a time. So I have no question if you said to me, look, I like the way he led. I love it. I wish someone would be a jerk to me or whatever. If you said something like that, I would never question you. I might recommend that's not a good idea, but you can think whatever you want. But when you start concluding that, hey, it worked and look at the results as if he did the right thing and all that, that's the part where you're contradicting yourself when you start telling me I wasn't there because you weren't there either. How do you know? Now you're going to say again.
But we both saw the results. We both saw the results.
No, we didn't. You saw the results that you wanted to see. And we went through this. A guy, no matter how good he is, no matter how much of a leader he is, no matter how much of a jerk he is or whatever, he's not going to make a team win and lose. But if you say, look, they won 6 rings, then the obvious question becomes, why didn't they win a ring every year they were good?
Because they weren't always at that level. It takes time to build a championship.
How do you know?
Because it happens for all players in the NBA, aside from Magic Johnson, who happened to go to the Lakers.
There's a lot of other players who win pretty fast, or at least faster than Michael Jordan. Would you admit that?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, that's going to happen. It depends on what you're. Now, you're talking about. There's other things that go into that particular equation. I mean, you have to be at the right place at the right time. You have to have the right mix of players.
I'm with you. You don't even have to finish. You don't even have to finish. I am 100% with you. We both know there's a lot of factors that come into play. But here's the problem.
Absolutely.
But here's the problem. You say a lot of factors come into play. But then on the other hand, you flip sides where you make it seem like, yeah, there's a lot of factors, but it's basically because of Michael Jordan.
Nope, I didn't make it seem that way at all. That's not even, and again, that's not my point. Of course, you need a team to win a championship, but you still need the cornerstone. You still need the foundational piece, and that was Michael Jordan.
Okay, so then the question becomes, if you're not saying that, and if you're saying, look, you need a team, and I assume you need health, you need coaching, you need chemistry. I know you know all these things.
Absolutely.
You need all these things.
Absolutely.
Then you have to show me, not by your beliefs, you have to show me how Michael Jordan made the difference, not just give me generic statements like he was a good leader and I liked it. Show me what he did to make the Bulls win, and then explain to me why so many of his own teammates question him, and we can get back to that other topic later about why they're doing it now and supposedly didn't do it earlier.
So you're asking, of course I wasn't there, but if you were there to watch the progression of the players that were around Michael Jordan, and I'm talking about specifically Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong to a degree because he got better as well. Their maturity and their growth happened.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think if you were to interview most Chicago Bulls and not like promise them money, not promise them you'll go on TV, not promise them you're going to get subscribers on YouTube, just a straight up private interview, do you think most of the players, because you can always find an exception to the rule, do you think most of the players would say, you know what, I was not good enough until Michael Jordan made me good enough?
Well, pride would get in the way. They would never say that.
Or maybe it's not pride and it's the truth. think.
No, it would be pride.
Okay, so
It certainly would be pride.
see, this is how I know you're a Michael Jordan fan, because you guys are so into your guy that you think that they must have a pride issue. You never consider maybe it never happened. Maybe when a guy goes to the NBA and he's an all-star talent or a Hall of Fame talent or a bench warmer talent or whatever, maybe he was just good and then he got better with experience and more minutes and he had good health and all that. You just basically simplify and go, Michael Jordan made him or them.
Look, who on that team? Who on that team that played with Michael Jordan was elevated their game to a point where they actually went out and were successful without Michael Jordan? And I'm not talking about Horace Grant, who went with the Lakers and went with Shaq in Orlando. I'm talking about even when Scottie Pippen left.
Sure. That's a good question. Before I get to that, I just want to understand what you mean by this. What do you mean as successful? What do they have to do in your mind to be successful?
To go on another team and actually be in the starting rotation, to be a real NBA player, not just coming off the bench, and not some of them don't even get burned. They actually are contributing to the team, helping them win, and they're guiding and helping to nurture the players that are coming up. Whether that's tough love, easy love, I don't care what it is. Right. I need you to come to the team. If you're coming from a team, a championship level team, or even a team that's good, and you get on a team that's not successful, if your impact on that team does not help that team move forward, what are you actually doing? What are you contributing to the team?
You're giving very simplified versions of what happened. Are you telling me that everyone who left Michael Jordan didn't do any of those things?
That's not what I'm saying.
You said who did it, so you acted like no one did it.
Well, who did?
Well, so are you saying no one did? I just want to make sure I understand.
I'm saying it because I want to hear who did. I don't know of any player who did.
I'm going to answer you. Believe me. I hope I've shown you I'm not going to dutch and dodge and deflect and downplay. I'm going to
Absolutely.
Answer you. But I want to first know, when you ask that question like, hey, who did it? You are showing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you are showing that no one did it.
No, nobody did. Who did?
Okay, so you are thinking that, right? Why can't you just admit that you are thinking that?
Because I want you to tell me who did.
See, here's what I think is the truth. I think you actually thought no one did, but then you were like trying to rethink it. Maybe that's not true, so you didn't want to admit it, so you want me to name names for you. Isn't that what happened?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody.
Okay, so now if I name some players, all you have to do is say, oh, they didn't do any of those things.
No, I wouldn't do that. If you name me a player and it's legit, I'm going to tell you you're absolutely right. Okay. And I'll stand corrected.
Okay, great. And the criteria, I assume, doesn't have to be just when they left Michael Jordan, because even before Michael Jordan, they could do well without him, right?
That's fine, too.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. How about I give you one better? Forget about leaving him. Forget about before him. How about when they played with him the first year?
Okay.
If they did good in the first year, would that be good enough?
That's fantastic. You got to be assuming you're talking about Rodman.
Okay. No, I'm not talking about Rodman, but that wouldn't be a bad choice. Not
at all.
Yeah. Okay, great. But there's a guy who played at a time when 1980s, and he was in his prime, and some people say he should be in the Hall of Fame, and he might get there, you never know. And he actually did all the things you said, contributing, being a good leader, trying to just, whatever, all the things you said, like, hey, it's not like why are you there? Like, he actually helped the team, and people liked him. And in case you want points, because I know you Michael Jordan fans love points, he scored 20-some points a game, and he didn't just do it for 1 year. He did it for more than 1 year. His name was Orlando Woolridge, but you're going to tell me why he doesn't count.
I would never tell you that he didn't count, other than when they were playing together on Chicago. What did Orlando Woolridge do? The team was young. They were. Like
I said, you're going to tell me why he doesn't count.
I didn't say he didn't count. I never said he didn't count.
When you say what did he do,
was a tremendous athlete.
Remember, you gave a bunch of things about what did anyone do when they left Michael Jordan. You gave a bunch of examples. Did they? I'm not trying to quote you, okay? But you basically thanks. You basically said something like, did they affect the team to win? Did they have good statistics? Were they helping people and all that? And I told you, if I list people for you, all you have to do is just dismiss them. And you said you wouldn't do that. I gave you a guy in his first year, in his second year, I think it was his first year and second year, he scored 20-some points. He was good before Michael Jordan. He affected the team in a positive way. He was a good leader and all that. And you basically questioned if he's a good example.
Orlando Woolridge.
Are you checking out the statistics online?
I'm looking them up right now.
Well, why don't you already know this? Why don't you, if you were right and I'm wrong, you should already know.
I never said you were wrong. I just simply said that the players that he had on his team, you're acting like those players left off and went and did something without him. And there was nobody that did that.
No, but that was one example, but you're acting like no one did it, but then you were saying, you're not saying that, but then you're saying no one did it. I'm not even sure what you believe. Do you believe no one did it?
Nobody that I remember, no.
Okay. Well, then, by the way, I don't expect you to remember all his statistics. I don't remember all his statistics, or anyone else. I don't expect you to remember anyone's statistics. But what I don't get is, if you're a NBA expert and you were there and you're someone who tries to analyze information.
I'm an NBA fan. I don't know about the expert part.
Okay, fine. Yeah. I thought you might say that, but I thought maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you consider yourself an NBA expert. But okay, fine. If you're someone who was there and you know the game and you're informed and all that, you don't have to know all his numbers or anyone else. You don't have to know the numbers of every other player. But I would think you would just know the basic stuff like that. Like, he was really that good. He was there. He helped his team and all that.
He was definitely there. There's no question he was there, but you're making it sound like his impact on the team was something above and beyond what it actually was.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm trying to go by your criteria of, remember, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but your overall criteria, being a good player, helping your team, scoring lots of points and all that. I'm not acting like he's above and beyond. I'm just not downplaying him or anyone else as much as you do.
I'm not downplaying anybody who was on the Bulls team, particularly when
you are big time.
Okay, that's fine. I'm downplaying him. Orlando Woolridge was definitely a good player. He was not a game changer. He was not a talent on the team that was going to get them over the hump.
That's like I predicted earlier. Remember, I told you, even if I list you names, you can downplay them, and you said you wouldn't do that. But you're doing that.
So now you've made your point. So answer me this: what did Orlando Woolridge do for the Bulls?
Well, check his numbers.
I already know what he did while he was in Chicago. I didn't know what he was doing before that.
Do you want personality examples, or what do you want?
No. I don't want personality. I don't need personality. I've already established that Michael Jordan's personality and leadership is fine with me.
Right.
That's not what I'm looking for.
So if you don't need statistics of Orlando Woolridge and you don't need his personality, what are you looking for? Like how what are you looking for? Like how he set screens or how he wasn't?
No, I'm looking for what kind of impact he brought to the team to help them win.
See that? There you go. And that's, I already knew what you meant. I just wanted you to say it. Why do you guys always act like I know you're not? I know you're going to say I'm wrong. I know that, but try to think about what you're doing. You're basically acting like it's individuals who win. It's not a team game. It's
absolutely a team game. It's a team game.
So here's a better question. If he's scoring 20 points and having that field goal percentage and getting his rebounds, and you questioning what did he do to help his team win, the better question would be, what do you want him to do?
I want Orlando Woolridge. And it wasn't even his fault per se during that time. The problem with that team and the way it was put together, competing with the other teams in the East, with the East being as stacked as it was, they did not have the right personnel to play those other teams or to mesh with Michael Jordan's game.
It depends on the year.
That was part of the problem.
It depends on the year.
You're talking the mid '80s. I'm talking the '80s when Jordan was drafted in '84.
I'm talking all the years he didn't win a ring. I can't go by the years he won a ring because you can just say Michael Jordan is basically the reason. So I'm trying to go by the years they lost.
I'm talking about the years that Orlando Woolridge played with Michael Jordan. Okay. That's what we're talking about. Woolridge right now.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so let me clarify. Yes. The original thing was to go to all the years, and then you wanted some examples, so I went to Orlando Woolridge. But Orlando Woolridge, even though he played a couple of years, the same logic is going to apply to all the other players from the 1980s. So even if you say Orlando Woolridge played 2 years, so we're going by those 2 years, but you can go to any year where he had a team, especially as time was passing, he always had some help. In fact, if you look at their win-loss records, it was getting better as time passed, but they still lost for many reasons why a team lost. But what you're doing is, and I know you won't say it straight up, I know you know it's a team game. Believe me, I know you know that. But you're doing what many Michael Jordan fans do. You play both sides where you go, yeah, one guy can't win and lose by himself, but then you go, it's basically one guy who wins and loses by himself.
I've never said that. That's not the point.
I know you didn't say that.
I've never even tried to make that point. You can't win a championship or be successful without a team. It's a team game.
So then why question Orlando Woolridge or Scottie Pippen or Horace or George Gervin or anyone else? And why put it all on Michael? Why put the majority of credit to Michael Jordan? Because no matter how you play this game, you can dominate, be above average, be average, or be below average. You ain't winning nothing if you don't have health, good team, good coach, and all that.
Well, yeah, health is a given. We don't have to say that. But in order to win championships, you definitely need a cornerstone player, a leader, or you need a really good player, and that will be Michael Jordan.
Are you sure?
Let me just tell you what I think.
Okay.
You need good teammates. You need a good coach, and you need a system that works within your talent.
Right.
Some coaches, right, and the Bulls ended up getting all that because when Doug Collins was there, Jordan was putting up crazy numbers, but that system did not work for the team.
Well, I wouldn't say the system was the issue. I would say the team wasn't good enough, and probably maybe health played a role, maybe a coach, a bunch of things. But at the end of the day, even if you have a bad coach and a bad system and you have injuries, you can still win if you just have a team that has more talent and plays better than the other team they're playing. So at the end of the day, I'm agreeing with you that basically a bunch of factors come into play. So we're on the same page there. But here's again the problem. When you give so much credit to Michael Jordan and you question how much help he had and you wonder how the help he had, it really helped his teams and all that, you are basically going back to that thing about one guy winning and losing.
That is not what that means.
Okay,
It's understanding who was the more important piece on the team. All the pieces are important, but just like in life, there are certain things in your life that are more important than others. That doesn't mean you don't respect everything or love everything, but if you're not smart enough to realize that the most important piece is this, and everybody else is important as well, but they are not on the same level.
Okay.
That is not disrespecting or discrediting anybody else. It's understanding that there's levels to everything.
But we're not talking
about Michael Jordan on the book.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, Michael Jordan was one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA, so obviously he's going to be the best player on the Chicago Bulls. That's easy.
Well, that's easy for some people. That's easy for some people. Not everyone agrees.
That's fine. Yeah. That's fine. If that is the case, if that is what people are thinking, then the first thing you're going to think, well, he's best player in the league. He's the best player on the Bulls.
If he was the best player,
that's fine.
Not everyone thought he was the best player in the league either. In fact, since you go by awards, I just want to point out he didn't even win the MVP every year. Since you want to go by awards,
no, he didn't. Absolutely. And some of those years. He should have won it, and he should have won it as well as I did.
No, I don't.
But
I don't.
That's a whole other that's a whole other topic conversation.
I don't believe he should have won it. In fact, if you really want to know, and I know I shouldn't tell you this because one, it's going to make you raise an eyebrow, and two, we're going to get sidetracked. But since you're bringing up side things here, I'm going to bring this up. I don't think he should have ever won the MVP award ever when he was in the NBA. He was never the best player in the NBA.
I don't think he should have either. Really? He didn't.
Really?
The MVP award, no.
But no,
like you
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you just said he should have won some years that he didn't win.
Of course, yeah, definitely. But based on the criteria they were using to vote for MVP, he should have won more. But the MVPs, just like you told me about the Defensive Player of the Year, they're all voted on. So that depends on how much a person likes you.
Interesting. Now I got to ask you just to make sure. So, I get that logic. Okay, fair enough. So let me ask you. Whether you go by the criteria they go by, or you don't, do you believe he was ever the best player when he was in the NBA?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so then I was right. Then you do think that. So then
no, but that doesn't. No, you weren't right. You just asked me and said I thought he should win the MVP every year. No, I didn't. The MVP to me, and this is me.
Oh, I see.
I am a Michael Jordan fan, but for me, the MVP is voted on. It is not that big of a deal. At the end of the day, it's just something that you have, that you've won, that you can measure against other players.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay,
I didn't need Michael Jordan to win MVPs for me to know that I was looking at the best player in the NBA.
I see. Okay, fair enough. No, that's a fair clarification. Now, I'm going to say right away. You're making up your own definition of what it means to be MVP because the MVP is supposed to be the best player in the league, and since you can't rely on one person to vote, you rely on the majority people. Now, if you have your own definition, fair enough. But I got to ask you then, Why didn't that same guy, even if you go by your criteria of what MVP means, why didn't that same guy? Why don't you think he should have won the MVP every year by your criteria, or do you think he should have won every year by your criteria?
I just, again, the MVP is, they're humans. They're people with opinions and thoughts.
Your criteria.
My criteria, he was the best player in the NBA.
Every year?
Full stop.
Every year?
Every year he was healthy and played. For me, he was the best player.
Wow, that's I think maybe just to clarify, maybe you want to say he's your favorite. Are you sure you want to say he's
absolutely? He's absolutely my favorite.
Okay, so,
let me go ahead and clear. He's absolutely my favorite.
Okay, so
now I'm talking to you from a basketball perspective.
Okay, so
I'm talking about people who played. Out of all the people who played in the NBA when Jordan was playing, he was the best player in the league.
Okay, so just to make sure. Are you saying both, that he was your favorite and he was actually the best every year when he was healthy?
Yes.
Okay. So, but then at the same time, you don't think that he has to win the MVP award? Okay, I got it. Okay.
No.
So we can get into why you think he was the best and all that. We can get into that later if you want to. But let's go back now to where we left off. I think we left off about the part about elevating him and team play and other things that come into play and all that. Okay, so if you say to me you get that other things come into play, you're saying that you get it, but then you talk about cornerstones. Remember, we're not questioning cornerstones. We're not questioning that you need really good players. But since you brought up cornerstones, I just want to point out to you, there are plenty of teams who have more than one cornerstone and they never win. How do you explain that? And then there are plenty of teams that have no accepted, this is the best guy on the team, and they still sometimes win or they do pretty well. How do you explain that? How do you explain both those things? And so if you're right, in other words, what I'm asking you, if you're right about the cornerstone thing, how do you explain that more cornerstones means some people still lose, less cornerstones means some people still win, and teams that have no fixed cornerstone either win or do pretty well? How do you explain all that?
Easy. It's matchups, number one, and number two, you play the games because you really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's still a sport. You still have to compete. And each team that you're playing against, you might have two cornerstones on your team, but they don't match up well with the team they're facing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm saying like Denver Nuggets, Seattle Supersonics back in the day. One was a 1 seed, one was an 8 seed. They just didn't match up well against them.
Well, to be fair, it's not always matchups. It could be other factors like health, chemistry, coaching, and all that. But okay,
it could be a number of things.
Right,
for sure.
Okay, so again, it sounds like we're on the same page, but then I don't know how to, because I know if I explain it a certain way, you're going to say that's not what I'm saying. But just if you could have an open mind, just don't let's not get into semantics. You are still You are still basically making it seem like you want to give a lot of credit for him for winning. Like he was the difference maker. He made everyone better and all that. Like when you say things like, well, what player did well after they left to that level, or whatever you were saying, I don't have the exact words, or you say like he made everyone better, or you make it seem like when the Bulls score 100 points and he scores 30 and all that, his statistics are so much impacting his team compared to every other star who gives those statistics and so on. So you are basically still going back to that thing where you elevate Michael Jordan, you put it on a guy.
For the Bulls and their success, he was that guy for the Bulls.
So why did he lose so many times?
Cherry full stop.
So why did he lose? No cherry full stop. Why did he lose so many times? Question mark.
Because the team wasn't good enough.
So
that's an easy question to answer.
Okay, so when he wins, it's him. It's not a team game. But when he loses, it's not him. It's a team game.
No, you never heard me say when they win, it's him. I just said he was a cornerstone. He was the best player on the team. But you still need a team to win.
I know you never. Let me establish this so we don't get stuck on this. You never said Michael Jordan won by himself. You never said one guy wins by himself. You acknowledge other things come into play and all that. So have I established that with you?
You have, and that's also established that when you imply that I said that shouldn't be happening either.
Okay. Well then, what? You know what? Let's clarify this. What are you? Okay. What are you implying?
I'm not implying anything. I'm stating.
Oh, come on.
Michael Jordan was the best player on the Chicago Bulls,
right?
And he was the most important piece to them winning championships. Okay. That's what I think.
So are you saying then if a team doesn't have the most important piece, they can't win a championship?
No, I've already explained to you that you even brought it up. It could be injuries, or it could be matchups, or it could be.
That's fine. Okay, that's fine. Okay,
fine.
That's fine. So if we're going to do this routine where you just kind of be passive about it, like, no, I'm not saying anything. I want to ask you, what are you trying to make? What point are you trying to make when you say he was the most important team and they won? What's your point? Like, why would you tell me
he was the most? He was the most. My point is, he was the most important and best player on the championship teams for the Chicago Bulls.
Right, but there's a reason, because we were talking about other things, and then this came up. What made you decide to tell me these things? Because everyone knows he was the most important player on the Chicago Bulls. Or most people know he was the most important player on the Chicago Bulls, and they won sometimes. So, what was the reason you decided to bring these things up?
It was in the flow of our conversation. And I can't even go right back to exactly what was said. We've said a lot since we've been on the phone.
Okay, no problem.
But,
no problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
So that came up in the flow of our conversation.
Okay, so here's the thing then. I'll remind you some things. Other stars do lots of things too. Scoring, rebounding, steals, and all that. And some of them never win. And some of them win more than him. And some of them win less than him and all that. So then the question becomes, if Michael Jordan is better than all of them, and I know you're not saying this is the only reason. I know you have other reasons too. I know. But if this is part of it, what is he doing that makes his team win more than anyone else? So for example, or more than the other stars sometimes wins. Or for example, again, the Bulls score 100 points. He gets 30. So obviously 70 points are left. He's not getting all the rebounds. He's not getting all the steals and all that. Why is he able to get so much credit over all the other stars? In your mind?
Let me ask you like this: have you in your life, have you ever been around somebody who was so confident and so laser focused on what they had to do that you working with them made you feel like you could do
well, before we get to
what you were capable
I'm going to answer your question, but just real quick, we went through this. Remember, we went back and forth on this, and you started saying that you're not saying it was good for them. This is what you like. So if we're going to get to why how he motivated everyone, he was confident. He was like, you know, a lot of people are not going to agree with you.
This has nothing to do with motivation. Motivation is a singular thing that applies to each person individually. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know you're not saying the word motivation. I'm just covering all bases.
I'm not even. I understand what you're doing. I got you. I understand what you're doing too. But I'm not even implying motivation.
No, that's fine. Okay, that's fine if you want to clarify. Let me just clarify. When you're going to tell me how you're asking me basically, have I been around someone who had that X factor and he made me want to do better, and he, whatever word you want to use, motivated me, got me in the mood, made me happy. If you're going to do that, remember we talked about this. You're assuming that's what happened for, I'm not going to say everyone, but for most of them. And then you switched it up and told me this is what you like personally. So we can't go by what you like personally. We have to go by what actually happened then.
Well, what I like personally is the way he led.
Right.
That's my person. That's what I like personally.
Okay, I can't say you're right or wrong. That's your thing.
That's fine. That's cool. But what he did and how he did it, the proof, as they say, is in the pudding. That team, if he wasn't leading that team in the way he led them, do you think they would have won 2 3-peats?
I could ask you the same question if Scottie Pippen wasn't there, if Phil Jackson wasn't there, if Horace Grant wasn't there, if Magic Johnson wasn't there, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wasn't there, Larry Bird wasn't there, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, you can ask this about anyone. So what the point is, I know you know that, but the point is, you're going to say, hey, look, you take anyone off, they got a less chance of winning. Sure. But there's something about Michael Jordan. I want to know what that something is. Not your belief. I want facts.
If I could define that for you, there'd be more people who did what he did. That's not something you can define. It was just Michael Jordan, man.
That sounds pretty magical, man.
Yeah, it does. And that whole run that they had,
it sounds like
the way he captivated the NBA, the world, the most famous athlete in the world at one time. All that stuff happened. It converged at the right time. I'm not trying to make this sound like it's magical and mythical.
No, but you are.
But sometimes things happen that you can't explain. But what you can explain, and if you actually saw it, and I'm sure you did, you saw the effect he had on his teammate. You saw Scottie was kind of mentally soft, and he was kind of weak when he first
You're not disrespecting players. You're not disrespecting players.
Hold up, stop, bro, stop. Let's don't be disingenuous. I'm not disrespecting Scottie Pippen. I'm not disrespecting Scottie Pippen. Okay. Scottie Pippen's a top 50 player, but when he first came in the league, he was green. Right or wrong, he had to mature, just like every other player, but particularly Scottie Pippen.
That's not what he says. He says differently. So am I supposed to believe Scottie Pippen or a random guy on the phone?
You're supposed to believe Scottie Pippen or whatever else you want to believe. But Scottie Pippen also said, Michael Jordan took me under his wing and taught me how to win.
Right. And
he said that in interviews too.
And he said,
are we supposed to ignore that?
And he said other things too. And Michael Jordan also said, I was waiting for a guy like Scottie Pippen. He also basically gave credit to his team for winning. He basically also said, you shouldn't just give me the credit. And I could give you tons of quotes from tons of coaches and tons of players. And most of the players he played with questioned his personality, and most of the coaches he played with didn't question his personality sometimes, but they didn't elevate him the way you are. All I basically got from you is, I believe Scottie Pippen was green. I believe Michael Jordan has this kind of thing you can't explain. I believe Michael Jordan basically had that thing in him to make everyone better and all that. These are your beliefs. Don't they call that the it factor? I think you even said that, the it factor, right? X factor,
right.
And lots of players have that. So if it becomes that Michael Jordan's X factor or it factor is better than everyone else's, I want proof. How do you know? Because what you're not getting is, and have an open mind to what I'm going to say. You don't have to agree on it. Just have an open mind.
I got you. Okay. I want you.
If you grew up in that time, and you know he was the most famous player of all time in the NBA, in the history of the NBA, and you know he's super rich and all that. Did you ever stop and think that maybe you're just so into the guy that you're not letting your judgment be factual or consistent? You have a bias.
I definitely have a bias to that era and to him in particular, him and Bird, because Bird is another one of those guys that I really rock with. But yeah, I do have a bias to that generation and to that era and to Michael Jordan. But the thing about Michael Jordan that cemented that for me was the way he kept doing it. It wasn't like he just had one magical year and went out here and led the league and blah blah blah, and they did this, that, and the other. He did it consistently. He did what? He did what? When they won the championship, when they started winning their championships, even before, because a lot of people like to say this slick thing, or you Michael Jordan fans think he only played 6 years.
Right, it's true. You guys act like that.
No, we don't act like that. A lot of times what ends up happening is we hear people talking about a different player, and they're trying to put him on level with Michael Jordan, and they don't belong there, and then we push back. What ends up happening is the person will sit here and say exactly what you said, and you'll say, oh, well, every time we bring this guy, you want to say this. Nah, bruh. No, but
listen to what you said. Listen to what you said. You started off good by saying, hey, we don't just go by 6 years. So I thought, let's see where he goes with this. If he's going to act like they don't really do this, there's a reason. Let's find out what he says. But you actually made your argument worse. You said, the reason we do this is because somebody else brings someone else up. In other words, what you might as well say to me, somebody dare questions my childhood NBA hero, so now I'm going to tear him down. The player.
Nah. I would never do that.
It's right? In any other sport, okay? You name the sport. Any other sport, if someone said Jerry West is the greatest, or Willie Mays is the greatest, or Hulk Hogan is the greatest, yeah, you're going to get pushback, you're going to get debates, you're going to get like, hey, you're wrong and all that. But they don't get the reactions like you guys, where you guys go, you can't explain the definition. He just made everyone better. I like someone who's a jerk and all that. You're basically, I've told this to people, you Michael Jordan fans are the Donald Trump fans of the NBA world, the Republicans of the NBA world.
I like that.
And you know what, by the way,
it's a possibility he might end up winning the presidency again.
A lot of people say they would vote for him. But by the way, one of the reasons I bring that joke up is because I know you have it in you to get it. I know you know how Donald Trump fans are and Republicans are. But what fascinates me is you'll say, I get it. There's people who are zombies, they're cult members, they act like that person can never do no wrong and all that, and you question them. You don't agree with them, you make it seem like they're silly and all that, but then you guys don't even realize you're doing the same things.
No,
just like they don't. Just like
I can't speak for anybody else.
You are.
No.
I mean, there's plenty of examples. When you play this tape back, you'll get lots of examples. Like, for example, my favorite one, well, I shouldn't say it's my favorite. Just I don't want to pick one as my favorite. But one of my favorite ones is when I asked you for a specific example, you basically made it seem like you didn't say magical, okay, but you made it seem like he was so amazing, you just can't explain it.
Again, we talked about the it factor. You even brought that up.
Right? But I didn't say he was the only one with the it factor. Remember? I said
of course he wasn't. But he's the only one who had the it factor that accomplished what he accomplished.
See, I'm glad you said that. That's what I mean when you act like other factors come into play for a team winning and losing, but then you go on the other side and you start acting like he's the reason. That's what I meant. What did he accomplish for his team to win?
What did he win individually? Because there are individual awards and there's team awards, correct?
Okay, and according to you, you don't even trust the awards. MVP is not a big deal for you.
Right? But they're still there. I can't sit here and say they're not there. That's part of the NBA culture.
Do you see what you're doing? When the awards argument... Let me show you. Well, you don't have to say no 1,000 times. Let me show you. When the award argument helps you, you go with the award. When it goes against you, you don't go with the award.
No, what my point is, the awards are part of it, whether I agree with them or not. I can't change that.
But I want to know if you agree with it or not. I'm not debating someone else. I'm debating you. So I want to know, do you go by awards?
Whether I agree with what?
The awards, what you just said.
I don't go by the awards as far as the team success. But the awards are still things that are put into each player's legacy.
Okay, so
that's what you use to measure players against each other. Okay, that's always happened.
So I thought we were done with the award topic, but we're not. So I want to know: do you agree?
We are.
I'll show you how we're not. When it comes to the NBA, baseball, football, any sport, and when it comes to things outside of sports, movies, TV programs, music, whatever, do you go by all awards and agree with all awards?
Of course not.
Okay,
no.
So that means you are cherry picking when to go by awards.
I'm picking the awards that Michael Jordan won as an individual.
Cherry picking.
That's what I'm picking. That's not cherry picking.
I'll tell you how it is. Because if you trust awards, fine. If you don't trust awards, fine. But when you go by awards when it helps you, but then you don't go by them when it doesn't help you, that's called cherry picking then.
No, it's called being an adult, man. So if there's MVP voting, those are voted by writers and sports people.
Okay.
Right? Scoring titles, that's black and white. You either scored the most points or you didn't.
Well, we're talking about, okay, so we were talking about voting all this time. You're going to something else now.
We said awards. All the awards that are given are not voted on. Some of those are just flat out earned.
No, I know that. No, I know. But all this time we were talking about the voting awards. It was clear it was about voting.
Well, we were talking about awards. I thought we were talking about awards in general. If you're talking specifically about voting awards, I already told you how I feel about the MVPs. Okay. I don't believe put a lot of stock in the MVPs.
Okay. Even if you really didn't know that we were talking about voting, which I don't believe, but let's say I'm wrong, and let's say you didn't know, fine. Even your own example, you didn't bring up scoring titles when you were talking about them with me. You brought up Defensive Player of the Year award, MVP award, and you might have brought up Finals MVP award, but I'm not sure. But anyway,
I didn't bring up Finals MVP. Fine, I did bring up the Defensive Player of the Year award,
and you told me it
was an award that was voted on, right. And I agree with you on that.
And the MVP.
But then also the fact of the matter that he's the 200-100 club as far as steals and blocks. That factored into that, and him being first team all defense. Uh-huh. I mean, some of these things are not just voted on. Some of these awards are just based on your production.
I addressed the steals thing. I gave you one thing at least, and you acknowledged it, that they didn't even keep a record of all these statistics. So you can't even go by this so-called award. And by the way, 10 scoring titles is not an award. It's leading in a category, you know?
Absolutely, but it still comes up as an accolade.
Well, that's not an award. That's not an award. That's an accolade.
Then we're getting into semantics. Then I apologize. That's my fault.
I understand, but it's not really semantics. One is like, hey, here's your academy. No, I'll tell you how it's not. If you get an Academy Award for Best Director, someone voted. Okay, if you get the so-called award for making the most money for a movie in a year, that's not an award. There's a clear difference.
Absolutely. Well, I apologize for not being clear. Okay. But I go back to what I was saying. Those things are black and white. And if you look at the things that he achieved as an individual in a team sport, that goes more to help the argument for Michael Jordan.
Well, no, it actually hurts his argument because I'll tell you how. If you're going to go by, and I'll make it easier for you, you can go by what you no semantics here. Go by awards, accolades, statistics, and all that. If that's your argument, do you know who has the most records of all time?
Yeah, in what category?
Most records of all time, not one category. Most records. Period.
Wilt Chamberlain.
Okay, so by your logic. I'm not saying this is the right way to go. Okay, I'm trying to get you to be consistent. By your logic,
Absolutely.
Not only should Wilt Chamberlain be the number one NBA player of all time, but Michael Jordan shouldn't even be ranked near him.
Michael Jordan. So let me address the Wilt Chamberlain thing.
Sure. Are you going to downplay the era he played in?
Oh no! I've already explained. I don't downplay it. I explained to you the era he played in. He played in the pre-modern. No, it's not.
It is.
No, it's not.
If you were playing in that time, if you were an old timer and you went through racism and you had it tougher because like all the things like they didn't have lack of practice facilities, you know all the things they had, how they had it tougher, and you sweated, you did everything you're supposed to do, and now you're 80 years old or whatever, and some young man who didn't watch you play, who didn't go to your games, who never played against you and all that, he told you what the league was like. And then he did something in a way where maybe he didn't mean to do this, maybe you didn't mean to, but I think you did, where you say something about the era as a reason why certain eras and certain players are not on the level of other eras and other players. That is disrespecting them, dismissing them, downplaying them, and not being fair. You wouldn't like that.
It's called offering perspective and context.
Right. And if you were an older guy, if you were that guy, you wouldn't like it if someone else did it.
People get outraged when they step on bubble gum. So I don't, whatever. If you want to get outraged about that, I respect you.
I'm not outraged. Come on, no, I'm just following.
I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about anybody who takes offense to what I said.
No, but why? We're talking about this thing. If you were an older player, you're 80 years old. I'm not going to repeat everything I said. Don't worry. I'm going to keep it simple.
Yeah.
You know you wouldn't like it if this was happening to you.
Of course not. Of course not.
So then, if you don't like it, if you don't like it, that means you would think it's disrespectful. It's downplaying. It's dismissing. It's not fair.
That's because it's a personal thing. It's like feels like an attack, and I get that, but I can't change the fact that the pre-NBA, what they had 8, 10 teams. And everybody in the country who was eligible or talented enough to play in the NBA weren't allowed to play. You weren't playing all the best players.
Well, that's why
they call it.
Can I ask a question?
That's why they call it the pre-modern NBA, and then you have the post-modern NBA after the NBA.
First of all, the only people that tell me all the time, and I don't want to just say me, because if I say me, you're going to say who do you talk to and all that. So turn on.
No, I wouldn't say that.
No, you didn't. No, you did that earlier. I don't know if you remember, but let's get past this.
About a specific point.
Right, yes.
Point.
I'm sure you would do it again. But okay, fine. If you
possibly, if you say something that warrants it, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm sure you'll do it. So when you when you tell me about less teams, you have to explain to me how come I can't find these arguments in hockey, football, wrestling, or anything else that is less of whatever. When it's in the NBA world, I can't find Jerry West fans, I can't find Magic Johnson fans, I can't find Kareem fans, or wherever. It's always Michael Jordan fans. Why don't you guys look at the pattern and ask yourselves who is doing it? For example, you said earlier, just not too long ago, you said that's why it's referred to as this era, modern era, pre-era, whatever. Who's referring to it like that? It's Michael Jordan fans. It's you people.
A simple Michael Jordan fans didn't make that term up. A simple Google search will.
No. That's a slick thing what you did. I didn't say they made up the term. I know, like for example.
You just said Michael Jordan fans made that up.
No. Let me explain. You took it the wrong way. The word racism. The word racism wasn't invented by one group of people in the last 20 years. But when you ask yourself who's being racist, that's a different topic. So, for example, I'm not saying Michael Jordan fans invented the terms, but whenever someone talks about less teams in the NBA, or when they talk about the best players weren't all there, or when they say things that you didn't say, like they'll say everybody was 6'6", they were all a bunch of white boys, they were all skinny, they weren't skilled, they weren't athletic, and all that stuff. But you're in that category because it's similar things. In other words, what I'm saying to you it's usually Michael Jordan fans, and you guys don't have it in you to look around and saying, who are the people saying these terms, modern NBA, pre-NBA? It's not Jerry West fans or Wayne Gretzky fans or Babe Ruth fans or whatever. It's Michael Jordan fans. I can give you examples in the media. They're mostly Michael Jordan fans doing this, and you got influenced by that.
I have my own opinions and my own thoughts.
Claims. They're claims. They're not opinions. They're claims.
That's fine. No, they're my opinion.
No.
So whether you agree or not, that's fine. That's fine.
No, it's not. This is important. It's an opinion if you were to say, I don't like that NBA because it wasn't entertaining. That's an opinion. But when you start saying things where I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, okay? So I hope you don't get stuck on this. When you question how good the era was, and you make it seem like Michael Jordan's era was better, and you question today's era and all that, you're making claims about what is more, whatever word you want to use, tougher, more skilled, more physical, or whatever. When you make claims, it'd be nice if you prove these things, but you're not going to prove it because there is no proof. And then when you don't have an answer, you go, like many Michael Jordan fans, you go, well, it's just my opinion, it's just my belief.
But not one time did I say anything about the talent or the abilities of those players back in the pre-modern NBA. I just called it what it was. Well, it was the pre-modern NBA.
That's unfair. But if you listen, man, if you say it's pre-modern NBA, and if you say the best players weren't all there, and if you say they had less teams and all that, you're not saying, man, they were like better than everyone else. You are saying they're not as good. They're not in that level. They're not as skilled or whatever.
That is what you are saying. I didn't say that. I said the pre-modern NBA. The NBA didn't merge until 76. That's called the modern NBA. I didn't make this stuff up. That's what it's called.
So who says that? Says who?
Who says what?
No, I'm saying if somebody writes an article and says the modern NBA started in 1976, why does that make him right?
They say, because they're trying to, what they're doing is they're describing or explaining when the two professional leagues in this country came together and made one league.
No. When people write articles, there's a million reasons why they write them, and I won't waste my time telling you why he wrote that. Now, I'll make it simple for you. Maybe he really believes in his head, whoever he or she is, maybe she really believes in her head that the modern NBA started magically when the ABA and NBA merged. Let's say you're right, okay? Just because a guy or a girl say these things or writes these things or whatever, makes a video about these things and all that, it doesn't mean they're right. And then even if you say, no, I trust this guy. He invented basketball. I really like him. Okay, fine. What about the other people? What about the other people who say the modern NBA started in 1979 with the three-point line, or it started in 1984 with Michael Jordan coming in, or a bunch of other things? Cool. Are you going to go by just anyone whenever you want? No. So then, how do you decide who to go by? And I still like an answer, by the way. You told me. I was going to tell you. You told me earlier when I was telling you what you're implying about the past. You said I didn't say they were not skilled and they weren't tough and they weren't physical and all that. So if you're not saying those things, but then you say the other things that you said, which I won't repeat to save time. What were you trying to imply? Because you're clearly trying to imply that whichever phrase you want to use, you were clearly trying to imply that they weren't as good, they didn't play in a league that was as tough, they weren't as skilled, or whatever.
If you have a professional sport league and one half of that sport league is not playing in it, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that the sport league that's already there playing aren't skilled or they're not good players. Mm-hmm. They're not competing against all of the good players. They're not, because everybody's not there, or everybody who could be there is not there. That's not a knock on the players because of social issues or whatever the case may be. That's not a knock on them or their abilities or their legacies. The fact of the matter is there is a delineation between when the league was a certain group and then when other groups were allowed to play as well. And I'm talking about teams and everything.
Okay, so there's two problems here.
That is the only thing pre-modern NBA means for me. I can't speak for anybody else.
There's two problems here. First, you are coming up with your definition of what is pre-modern NBA and modern NBA. So when you make claims about what's pre-modern NBA and what's modern NBA, you have to you don't have to, but it would be nice if you backed it up with proof, not with your beliefs then. Now, second problem you're going to have here is if you're going to give the argument like, look, I'm not saying they're not skilled or they're not physical or they're not athletic, whatever. I'm just saying they didn't play against the best. So then it seems like you're saying that because they're not playing against the best, they're not going to be ranked as high, or they're not going to be thought of as good, or their era is not going to be thought of as like being better than Michael Jordan's era or whatever. So even though you're not saying straight up, hey, you suck, you can't play, you're terrible and all that, you're still going along those lines. Because if you're saying, I'm not saying those things, then what are you saying? Because you're taking away from them, you're downplaying them, you're not ranking them as high, and so on.
I'm not taking away from them. I'm telling you just like it was. That was the pre-modern NBA, man.
That's your belief.
I don't know what else to tell. That's fine. I'm not the only person who categorizes it that way. It's written all over the place. You can look it up yourself.
And we went through this. Who are these people? They're mostly Michael Jordan fans.
No, they're not. They're just writers. They're people who are historians of the NBA.
Yeah, well, you can name names if you want, but I can tell you, most NBA fans, and I know you know this, pick Michael Jordan as the number one NBA player of all time. He gets brought up. He's the guy who's made them the most money, and it's not rightfully so.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's also the guy that people just are really, in love with the most for NBA players and all that. So when you have places that are trying to make money and get attention and, get credibility and all that, they're not going to sit there and say, hey guys, Michael Jordan's era suck. George Mikan's era is the best. Nobody's going to care. So what they do is...
There's a lot more people that do that nowadays for clickbait. There's a lot of people that talk trash about Michael Jordan now.
And that kind of thing was happening in the past too. Ratings have been, money, attention, all that has been happening for a long time. But in your defense, all that doesn't mean anything anyway, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you believe or what I believe or what they believe. You got to do two things. You got to prove it with facts, and then you got to be consistent. I already explained the facts part, and I'm going to explain again the consistent part. If you're going to say to me the best players weren't there, then you have to be consistent and acknowledge that when my that's what I meant. Yeah, okay. I understand you want to clarify that, no problem. But that's what I meant.
Yeah, because you seem to be you're really particular about the wording. I want to make sure we're both particular. So
actually,
yes, I said not all.
No, I'm not too particular about the wording. I even told you I don't have the exact words. Don't quote me many times.
I know you didn't, but I want to make sure that's clearly understood.
Sure. No, that's fine. Like I'm saying, it's fine. Then that's what I meant. That's what I want to clarify that. Then you have to be consistent. You have to now acknowledge, well, you don't have to, but if you want to be fair, it'd be nice if you acknowledge that when Michael Jordan was in the NBA, all of the best players in the world weren't there.
Absolutely.
But earlier when I brought this up, you actually didn't agree with that. You actually wanted me to give you names.
I didn't disagree with you either.
No, you did. Come on.
No, I didn't. So everybody who has the talent to get to the NBA doesn't necessarily get there.
Right.
And I can't sit here and talk about that's a woulda, shoulda, coulda.
But that's not. But wait, I got to interrupt you. I apologize, but I want to remind you more of what you said. When I told you these things, you told me, and again, I don't have the exact words, don't quote me, but you basically said something like, I don't buy that. That's an excuse. That's not good enough and all that.
I don't buy what are you talking about?
When we're talking about why some players don't come to the NBA from Europe or wherever, you were basically saying something like, that's an excuse. That's not good enough. I don't buy that, and things like that.
I'm talking about if you don't make it to the NBA, then you're not even in the comments. You weren't in the league. How can I even talk about you?
Well, first of all, the Hall of Fame disagrees with you on that. You know that.
Oh, no, I'm not talking. Yeah, the Hall of Fame is basketball. It's not the NBA.
Right. Well, you're not saying Michael Jordan is the best NBA player of all time, but not the best basketball player of all time, are you?
I said he's the best NBA player. I've never said anything other than that. He's the best player the NBA's ever had.
Okay, so just to clarify, if someone asks you, is Michael Jordan the number one basketball player of all time, what do you say?
In the NBA, yes.
No, I'm saying, my question again, basketball player of all time.
Nobody can say that because I haven't seen everybody else. Okay. I can't say that.
But you haven't seen all the other players? Okay, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players. I happen to be one of these people who thinks that had Len Bias not OD'd, we could be having a very different conversation. He was different. He was incredible.
I thought you were. I respect that, but I thought you were the kind of guy who was saying earlier that you made it seem like you're not really into woulda, shoulda, couldas.
No, I'm not into woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I saw him. I saw him play in college, and you could tell the battles he had against North Carolina and Michael Jordan. I mean, he played Michael Jordan to a standstill and outplayed him a couple times.
Okay.
So that's just like projection. You can kind of see where that would go if they have both made it to the league and pushed each other.
Okay.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So if your argument is, look, I can't say Michael Jordan is the number one basketball player of all time because I haven't seen all the players. Couldn't you say the same thing about NBA players and ABA players? You haven't seen all the players, so how do you know he's the number one NBA player of all time?
Based on what I've seen and the stuff the research I've done and the players that I've watched and done research on, Michael Jordan was the best NBA player.
Okay, well then that's a different argument. Now it's no longer he's the number one NBA player of all time. Now it's become, out of all the players you've seen and researched and know about and all that, he's the number one NBA player out of all the players you've seen in research, know about and all that. So that's not all time.
Yeah, well, not just me, but a lot of people, a lot of ex-players say the same thing.
Well, first of all, we're going back into what people think, and popularity doesn't equal factual. But if you want to go by what people think, I'm down with that. I'm totally down with that. I'm down with that. I'm totally down with that. Do you know most NBA Hall of Famers do not pick Michael Jordan as the number one NBA player of all time, and Michael Jordan himself does not pick himself as a number one NBA player of all time, and he doesn't think you should go by rings, and he doesn't think there's a such thing as a number one NBA player of all time. And
Absolutely.
Most of his coaches don't pick him, most of his teammates don't pick him, and most of the people he played against don't pick him. But I'm not saying you're going to say this, but a lot of people love to go by what's on TV. Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and pretty much anyone else who comes on TV. And by the way, you don't even know if they're telling. There could be a million reasons why they pick Michael Jordan. Maybe they mean it, maybe they don't, maybe it depends on. So one more thing I want to point out. I know I said a lot there. One more thing, if you don't mind. Actually, I want to ask your permission because I said a lot. Can I give you one more thing? All right, thank you. Thank you. If you're going to give the argument that most people, whatever you said, most pick them and all that argument, there's a lot of problems with that argument. A lot. I won't give you all of them, but just here's one more example. If they say he's the number one NBA player of all time, how does that make them right?
How does that? It makes them, well, their perspective, I would think, would be a little bit more valid than even the fans, even though we watched and saw him play. You're talking about people who actually competed in the league, who understand the rigors and what it takes to be that good for that extended amount of time and to have those kind of results. So their opinion, because they actually played it, would be viewed maybe a little differently. Not that it's more valid, but that it might be viewed, be a little more credible. So because they understand what it takes to actually do it. So I would think that their opinion would matter maybe just a little bit more than ours does. The majority of fans think he's the best too.
Okay, so a couple things here. Now you said majority of fans, so we got that thing too. Okay, so whenever someone brings up the majority argument, there's a lot of problems, but I'm not going to give you every reason on why it's questionable. Let's give you some. First of all, how does it make them right? Now, you said it doesn't make them right, but their perspective is different and all that. Okay, fine, that's true. But how does it make them right? And you said maybe it makes it more credible. How does it make it more credible? How does it make them more credible? Next argument is, if you're going to go by the majority, then you have to be consistent and you have to go by the majority on everything. NBA, sports, non-sports, and so on. Third thing, when you say most fans pick them, we agree. But now, who are these fans? Are they all reliable? Do any of them have biases? Are these people influenced by the media in a negative way, and so on? So, for example, if an 11-year-old boy in Pakistan tells you Michael Jordan is the number one NBA player of all time, I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm not trying to be rude to him or elevate him. I'm just asking, are you really going to go by the majority of fans? And, at the end of the day, what about what Michael Jordan thinks? And what about what most of the Hall of Famers think? Because most Hall of Famers don't pick Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan doesn't pick Michael Jordan.
I would never expect him to pick himself. That's narcissism 101. I mean, that's ridiculous. But matter of fact, he's got enough people saying that he's the greatest. He doesn't really need to say that anyway.
That second part is true. That second part is true. The first part, he has gone around acting like he's the greatest of all time. You know that.
Yeah, of course. That's confident. You're supposed. How else are you supposed to act?
No, but when you say you would never expect him to, he has either said it sometimes that he's the greatest or implied he's the greatest.
Absolutely, but he's never come out and just flat out said it in front of a microphone like I'm the greatest player. Blah blah blah.
That's a really slippery slope kind of a thing. It's a little unfair. It's like, I mean, look, if you're asking me, has there ever been an interview where he was on ABC News and he said, Michael Jordan, are you the number one NBA player of all time? Yes. Yeah, it wasn't like that, okay? But he did things over the years where he did say he was the greatest, or he implied he was the greatest. It's not that different,
It's a lot different.
How about the first part? He did say he was the greatest.
He said he was the greatest basketball player ever.
Yeah, yeah. Now I don't have the exact words, but when you watch what he says now, it's like, okay, he says he's the greatest. Even if it's an advertisement, a commercial for a video game, then he does these things. But you're right to your you're right to your second. It's not just commercial. That was one example, but you're right to your second point. He doesn't have to because people say it for him. That's right. That's true. Now, what about the majority of Hall of Famers? Most of them don't pick them.
Well, I don't know that to be true.
Do you have any proof that most of them pick them?
Do you have any proof that they don't?
Well, first of all, if you're making the claim about majority and you don't know it to be true, then your answer should just be, I don't know, period. But you kind
I said majority of fans.
No, I know.
You're talking about Hall of Famers.
I know. I got you. But you also said something before the fans. You were saying some other things about, I don't remember it now, but you said something about, well, the majority of players or someone picks him. It wasn't just fans.
Yes. It wasn't just Hall of Famers. It was role players. It was journeymen. It was all kind of players in the NBA.
So do you have any proof of all that most of them pick them?
Yeah, there's interviews and everything. You can look that up for yourself.
So again, I'm going to ask the question again. Do you have proof that most Hall of Famers pick them?
I don't have the proof of that.
Okay, so how do you explain that you have proof of bench players, for example, but you don't have proof of Hall of Famers? You think that makes sense then?
It does make sense because they have polls, they have interviews, they've done stuff over the years, and that has come back overwhelmingly that they pick Michael Jordan.
Well, first of all, the first part is not true. The polls for the players, there is no poll that overwhelmingly picked Michael Jordan if the poll was being asked to the majority of players. Now, you did have some polls where the majority picked him, but go find out what they did in those polls, and you will get more examples of how the media is having an unfair bias for Michael Jordan. I could tell you right now if you want, or I could just go on to the next thing if you want.
You can, I'll look into that. You can go on to the next thing. I think the media spends biases for every player. So
no.
Yeah, they do.
Well, let me clarify.
Even currently, they do that.
I wouldn't say they spin biases for Jerry Lucas and Nate Thurmond, George Mikan, and so on. Now, if some of those things are there, it's rare. And also, even if I'm wrong, even if they spin biases for everyone in the past and everyone today, they don't spin the bias for them to the level they spin it for Michael Jordan. It's not even
close. They should, because most people see him as the greatest. To whom much is given, much is expected.
So are you saying, just to make sure I understand, are you saying that when they do it, it's okay because they're trying to get money, ratings, and attention, all that? Or are you saying it's okay because they're right, or both then?
I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know what their personal reason for doing it, but I believe Michael Jordan is the greatest. So as far as I'm concerned, they're just something already new anyway.
But you can't have it both ways, because earlier when you were saying to me about how they pick them, you were trying to make a point like, oh, look, most of them pick them. But now when I ask you why, you go, I don't know why, but you know what? I pick them. You can't play both sides like that. Are you going to go by the majority of people in the media, or you're not going to go by them?
I'm not going to go by the majority of people in the media who think Michael Jordan is the greatest player.
It's up to you. Remember, you brought up the point about, I'm not trying to quote your exact words, but you...
Please quote me, because I'm kind of lost now. I'm trying to understand how you're trying to tie this together.
Yeah, I don't have the exact words, but when you were telling me about how the majority of them pick them, media in this case, you were trying to make a case like, hey, look, they're on my side. You were trying to say why he might be the greatest, why they're more reliable and all that. But when I ask you about it, you go, well, you know what? I don't know why they do it. I pick them as the greatest.
Yeah, you're asking me to explain why millions of people have their thoughts or opinions or ideas or whatever they have. I can't answer that.
No. I was asking you about why do you think the media picks them, but let me just clarify this. When you brought up those points that most of the media people pick up, or whoever else, the majority, there was a reason you brought it up. You were trying to show that they're on your side, that maybe they're right, maybe they're more credible and all that. But then when I ask you about specifics, you go, I don't know why they do it, but I do it.
So, okay, you want to know specifically why I do it? Is that what you're trying to find out?
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
Why did you feel the need to bring up that most of the people in the media bring them up, most of the bench players, most of the fans or whatever pick them? What was your point?
My point is they pick him because he was the best player that played in the NBA.
Okay, so why?
It's really that simple.
But this is, you're just telling me they pick him and it's okay because he's the best. How do you know they're right? How do you know that they're reliable, that they're factual and all that?
I know. Only thing I can go by is that they played in the NBA and they have an opinion or they have a belief for themselves. I can't tell you specifically why every one of these people who say that.
So then why go by them?
I'm going by me. It just so happens that we are aligned in this belief.
Right, no, I know, but what's the point? But no, you're going by you, but you're also going by them. So yeah, you guys are...
No.
No? Okay.
I have believed Michael Jordan was the greatest player in the NBA for a long time. I don't need interviews and people's opinions.
No. I'm not saying you're doing it because of them. I'm saying, what's the point of bringing them up as part of your reason of why you're right?
Did I bring them up as a part of a...
I'll make it easy. I'll make it easy for you. You did bring them up, but even if you didn't, it doesn't matter. At some point, you reference them. What's the point of you referencing them? Because I'm taking it as, and I know I'm right on this, but you can tell me if I'm wrong. I'm taking it as you're trying to show, hey, look, they're on my side. Hey, look, they've done research. Hey, look, they're credible and all that. But when I ask you, how do you know they're reliable, they're factual, that they don't have a bias and all that? You go, well, I don't know why they're doing it, but I pick them.
Okay, let me make it clear.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't reference them to make my point. My point is made that I believe Michael Jordan is the greatest NBA player of all time. Period.
Okay.
For me, what those other people believe, if they believe the same thing I do, fantastic. So whether they're credible, I would assume they're credible. They're just as credible as I am, if not more so.
Okay. Why would you assume they're more credible? Why?
Because they played in the league.
Okay, so
they know more about basketball than we do.
So if a guy has a 10-day contract in the NBA, he knows who's the number one NBA player of all time?
He has a better idea of what it takes to grind in the NBA than you and I do.
Okay, so give me an example. For example, we know playing in the league will show the day-to-day stuff, going practice. They'll know about going to the hotel and all that. Sure. What is it about playing in the NBA that makes these people magically know who is the number one NBA player of all time?
Well, because you're playing at the pinnacle of the sport. You're playing the best. You're supposed to be playing the best athletes and the best skilled players in the world. Technically, that's what they call it. Even though we know better, the world is huge. There's great players all over the place. But the NBA is the league in this country where the best players are playing, and you're pitting your skills against other great players. And playing against other great players is different than playing a pickup game at a run and shoot somewhere.
Right. So no. You explained very good about how good the NBA is, what they, how they learn certain things, how they have more credibility and all that. But that doesn't explain how they know who's the number one NBA player of all time.
I don't understand why it wouldn't explain it. What other explanation do you need?
Well, more than what you told me. You're basically telling me anyone who plays in the NBA is going to be more reliable to know who's the number one NBA player of all time. That doesn't make any sense.
No, their opinion on the topic, it's got their opinion on that particular topic has a little more insight than you and I would have.
What's the insight? What's the insight? And by the way, it's a claim. It's not an opinion.
Okay, that's fine. Claim. I've never been in the NBA locker room. If you've been in there, you've been around it, and you've talked to these players, and if you're around them and you get the general idea of what's going on in there, there's a different level of competition and comprehension about basketball in a NBA locker room than there is with you and me talking on the telephone.
All that is true, but that's not going to mean that their understanding or their education, information they have, and all that. That doesn't mean that anything they do or don't do is going to give them more information about who's the number one NBA player of all time.
That saying, what you saying that doesn't mean that it doesn't give them that either.
Right. Well,
so you can't.
That's a very.
I can't prove the other.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All I'm saying is, you're telling me that either they play in the NBA, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right, or that they have the education or whatever to what they're saying is actually true, right?
Right, but there's a difference. We both agree it doesn't. I haven't proven it. You haven't proven it, but there's a difference here. The difference here, you're elevating them as if they're more reliable. I'm not.
Cool.
So why are you doing
that? Then that's fine.
Okay.
because they played in the league.
Well, now we're going in a circle. Now we're going in a circle. Playing in the NBA.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Playing in the NBA means you're going to know certain things. Again, you're going to know like the practices. You're going to know about going to the hotels, going to the buses, and all that. You're not going to have some more insight about who's the number one NBA player of all time. And by the way, I want to remind you, if that does give you more insight, I'd like to know why there's no evidence that the majority of NBA Hall of Famers pick Michael Jordan as a number one NBA player of all time.
There's no evidence that says they don't.
Okay, that's a very bad way to analyze things. This is like saying to me, this is like saying to me, here, I say to you, there's no evidence there's a zebra flying in Mars, and you say, well, there's no evidence there isn't. That's just, you're basically telling me we should all accept everything if there's no evidence on anything.
No, I'm not telling you that. What I'm saying to you is, when you say stuff like that, you're basically telling me that you can't refute what I'm saying, but you're saying the opposite in a way that makes it sound like
I can refute it. I just didn't get to it yet because I want to stay on this topic first. I'll get to the proof. I first want to know if there is no proof that the most NBA Hall of Famers pick Michael Jordan as the number one NBA player of all time. Why is your first reaction to say, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't? Why isn't your first reaction just, okay, there's no proof, then I don't know?
Okay, then you're right. Absolutely. I don't know.
Okay. So then, here's the question again.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to talk about players in the NBA being more reliable, why isn't there proof that the majority of NBA Hall of Famers pick Michael Jordan as a number one NBA player of all time?
I don't know.
Okay, so then, logically, wouldn't you say, if there's no proof of Hall of Famers doing it, either they don't pick them, or you shouldn't be going by non-Hall of Famers?
No.
Oh, why is that?
Because the Hall of Famers in the NBA and the players who played in the NBA, what am I supposed to take the Hall of Famers' word or belief over the players who actually... I'm talking about players who played in the league, period.
Yeah, Hall of Famers played against Michael Jordan and played with Michael Jordan.
Absolutely, and so did bench players and journeymen and everybody else. Everybody has a right.
Well, who's more reliable? Who's more reliable? Remember, you're the one saying to me how playing in the NBA gives them, basically they're more reliable. So by your logic,
it gives them more insight. It gives them more insight.
Fine. Any word reliable, insight, credibility, these are all the same thing, basically. If you go by insight, it basically still means they're more reliable. So then by your logic, I'm not even saying I agree with you, but let's just say you're right. By your logic, if you're going to go by the people in the NBA, you should go by the best. And when it comes to the majority of Hall of Famers, and by the way, the majority of coaches, there's no evidence that the majority of them pick Michael Jordan as a number one NBA player of all time. And when I ask you why, you say, I don't know, and that's fine. But then you jump ship and you go back to the non-Hall of Famers and you ignore the Hall of Famers and the coaches.
I haven't ignored the Hall of Famers. I said NBA players. You're the one who brought the delineation between Hall of Famer and NBA player.
Right.
I simply said NBA players. So I wasn't focusing on the Hall of Famers. You're the one who's kind of on that.
It's a logical thing, because if you're going to give credibility to certain players, because you say they're in the league, so they're more reliable, you would think that your logic would take you and go, I'm going to go by the best and I'm going to go by the coaches.
No, my whole point was people who have played in the NBA. I was not even talking about the coaches. And
I know that. I'm asking, why not? Yes. If you're going to go by people in the NBA who played in the NBA, why are you not going by the best and the coaches?
Well, everybody who played in the NBA is the best of the best to get to that level. No one necessarily the best.
Oh, come on! You know what I mean. There's people who are better than others. You know what I mean. There's coaches too.
Sure there are, but these people are still playing in the league, man. That's my ultimate point.
So are you saying that everyone in basketball who plays in the NBA, whether they're a coach or a player, they all have this equal amount of reliability? They're all on the same level?
They don't have the same ability to play basketball, but they all played in the league.
Right. Okay. So fine. But when it comes to all these players and coaches, are you saying they're all reliable to the same level?
Nobody is reliable to the same level.
Okay. So
no.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So if the answer is no, wouldn't you go by the people who are the most reliable?
Of course.
Okay. And wouldn't you agree that the Hall of Famers and the coaches, by your logic, okay, if we're going to go by who's more reliable, wouldn't you agree that the Hall of Famers and the coaches, and coaches can be Hall of Famers too, obviously, then, wouldn't you agree that they're the most reliable?
No, I would not. And I will tell you why.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to tell you that is because, again, you and I do not know what their agenda is. You and I don't know what their beliefs are.
Wait, hold on. So, I sorry to interrupt you. I'm just surprised you said that. You know, you could have said the same things about the non-Hall of Famers and the non-coaches.
Sure.
But you don't. But you don't do that.
Because I never made a distinction between NBA players and Hall of Famers. That's something you brought in the conversation. I simply said
that's unfair.
I simply said they played in the league. I'm talking about NBA players.
No, but
whether they're Hall of Famers, All Stars, journeymen, bench players. All I'm saying is guys who played in the league understand what it takes to be at a certain level.
But there was a reason you did that. You're trying to show that they're more reliable.
No, I'm trying to show that they have better insight because they played in the NBA.
We went through this.
There was nothing ambiguous about what I said. There was no ambiguity in what I said.
We went through this. We're playing word games. Whatever word you want to use, reliable, informed, credible, and all that, it's all kind of the same thing. And at the end of the day, you are saying they're more reliable. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to understand why with the Hall of Famers and the coaches you say, we don't know what their agenda is, what they're really thinking, if they're being fair and all that. When you go by the people who are the Hall of Famers or coaches, you question if they're reliable. But you don't do that with the non-Hall of Famers and the non-coaches. That's not being consistent then.
It's being consistent because my point was originally when I said that we're talking about NBA players. Again, you brought up the part, and I hate to get into this because now, if we start going down this road, then you'll be able to turn it around and say, well, you're saying this, and you're talking about this, that, and the other, and I don't want to get. But no, let me say this so I can make this clear.
Okay.
I don't want to get this into a point where it starts to seem like we're getting into name calling or I'm getting defensive or whatever, because I'm not.
Uh-huh.
The bottom line is why some of the Hall of Famers feel that way. I don't know that to be true, so I can't speak on that right now. What I do know is the majority of NBA players have Michael Jordan as the greatest NBA player of all time.
Okay, are you saying
now, whether or not that's Hall of Famers, ex-coaches, this, that, and the other, that doesn't concern me.
Okay.
What concerns me is that the majority of these players, ex-players, and even some of the current players feel that way.
Okay. So you're saying majority of players, including the Hall of Famers, right?
I'm talking about players.
No, majority of players. All the NBA players who ever played in the NBA, the majority of them, that would include the Hall of Famers, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Past coaches, all of them.
Okay. Okay. And coaches too?
If they played in the NBA and they coached in the NBA, sure.
Okay. So the majority of players in the NBA and the majority of coaches in the NBA pick Michael Jordan as the number one NBA player of all time. Before I address that, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. What's the point of you telling me these things?
What's the point of me telling you what things? The majority of the players?
When you're explaining, here, look, this is what I meant. Okay. What was the point of you bringing these things up? I don't mean like tell me how it happened, like what led to what. I'm just asking what's your overall point of why these are your points?
That Michael Jordan is the greatest NBA player. Is that what you're asking me now?
No. Like when you're trying to clarify what you meant. So you clarified. You're saying the majority of players pick Michael Jordan and the majority of coaches pick Michael Jordan. Okay, great. You clarified. Now, what's your point about that? Why are you telling me these things?
Because I wanted to be clear, because I wasn't making a distinction between...
No, not that. Not how it started, what led to what. You're trying to claim a misunderstanding and all that. Now that you've clarified it, and you did it before too, now let's get back to the original thing. Where are you going with this? Where are you going? What's the point? Why are you bringing these examples up then?
The majority of people associated with the NBA, fans, even casual people who really don't care about sports, they see Michael Jordan as the greatest NBA player of all time.
Right. I explained some reasons why it's not a good point to go by the majority, but you're still going by the majority. So why?
Because I believe it to be true.
Right. But okay, so are you saying that it validates you because the majority of people believe it? Here's what I think is happening. I'm going to tell you why I'm asking. I think what you're doing is, and you can just correct me if I'm wrong, but let me just explain to you. I think what you're doing is what many Michael Jordan fans do. When they don't have proof that they're right, they want to show you, well, look, The majority of NBA Hall of Famers agree with me. The majority of NBA players agree with me. The majority of NBA coaches agree with me, and so on. Now, if I ask you if that's true, you're probably going to say no, right? So then you tell me if the answer is no, what's the point of you bringing these things up then?
You're absolutely, that's not correct.
Okay.
So yeah, I did say no. Yes, for sure.
Okay.
I just brought that up as an example, right? To go along with what I already believe to be true anyway. And I believe it to be true based on what I've seen.
So you're just bringing it up for no reason, just to show for no reason?
No, it's not for no reason. I'm just simply showing that there's more people who believe this guy was the greatest.
Why are you showing that? Why are you showing that?
Because it shows consensus. It shows consistency through most of the players who actually played in the NBA.
So then I was not wrong.
So
I was not wrong. That was the reason you're doing it.
It was part of the reason, sure.
But you said no. You said you make it seem like I was wrong. So
well,
unless you meant consensus means something else, like I don't know the definition of the word. I mean, did you mean something else?
No, consensus means that. But what I was saying no to was the way that you were wording it in a way that made it seem kind of negative. Like I'm sitting here telling you that in Michael Jordan I'm right and you're wrong, or this, that, and the other.
No. Yeah, no, I didn't mean in a negative way. My point was to show that whenever Michael Jordan fans don't have proof that they're right and you're wrong, they start to play this game where they go, hey, most of these experts agree with me. Most of these people are on my side. I'm in the majority and all that because they're trying to show that they're right and you're wrong. Now, I'm asking you if that's what you're doing. You said no, but then you told me, well, that's a consensus. So you are doing that.
As far as for me, right, you're not wrong about anything you're saying.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. I think you're on point for you. That's
no, I'm not giving you opinions and beliefs and guesses and assumptions.
No. Because I believe that Michael Jordan is the greatest NBA player in the history of the NBA. That's my belief.
Right. I agree. It is your belief, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Now, the same way that you're telling me that I cannot prove that he is, or that Michael Jordan fans do X, Y, and Z if they can't prove it, you haven't presented anything to prove otherwise either. Okay. And I'm not trying to. No, I understand.
You're not trying to be mean. You're not trying to be mean. You're just trying to make your point.
Not at all. So there are definitely more things that support him being in that position than there are against him being in that position.
Okay, so we got a lot to bring up here. First of all, when you make it seem like I haven't done it, that's not true. I have. I didn't get into too many details because we're going over so many other things. But you know what? Whether I did it or I didn't, it doesn't matter anyway, because you're making the claim that he is the number one NBA player of all time. So it's up to you if you want to prove it, and you haven't proven it, and you're not going to because there is no proof. Now, when you say it's a belief, yes, that's true. It's a belief. But you're not just saying, hey, look, man, you know what? Everybody has an opinion, and it's my opinion. Maybe you did that before, I don't know, but it doesn't work like that. It's like if somebody said to you, in my opinion, Robert Horry is the number one NBA player of all time. You see how that doesn't make any sense? Or if someone says
I'd laugh at him and I'd tell him, do you? Because I'm not going to argue that.
But do you understand how it's not an opinion? It doesn't make. It's like a better example would be maybe, well, not a better one, but another example would be if you tell a Japanese guy, in my opinion, you're black. Or if you said, in my opinion, aliens are on Earth. Or in my opinion, the year is 2049. They're not opinions; they're claims. And one more thing, I'm almost there. If you want, I can give you more details about why he's not the number one NBA player of all time, but I shouldn't have to. I'm not making the claim he's the greatest. I'm not ranking him. I didn't say, hey, my guy's pick my guy. My guy is the number one NBA player of all time, and so on.
You're telling me that the majority of players and coaches don't pick Michael Jordan as the number one player.
That's right. And I'm also going to add on to that. Whenever I have someone tell me this, because I hear all kinds of things like the majority of Hall of Famers pick him as the greatest. The majority of players who are not Hall of Famers pick him as the greatest. The majority of coaches pick him as the greatest, and so on. It's always Michael Jordan fans telling me this. They're influenced by the media. They have a bias. They haven't done enough research, and so on. I have a main page where I put video of Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer who give their takes on this topic and a lot of other topics, and they hardly ever pick Michael Jordan. But when I ask Michael Jordan fans, it's always like this amazing thing. Oh, the majority of them pick him. The only one you guys get right is the fans part. The majority of fans pick him. So who's more
Absolutely.
reliable, the players and coaches or the fans?
The players and coaches would be more reliable because they played in the league, but the fans' point of view counts as well.
Of course they do, because it helps you.
So, no, well, it's period. It supports. It definitely supports what I believe because I definitely.
Do you want me to give you the example again of an 11-year-old in Pakistan? How about a 2-year-old in Mexico? How about a 49-year-old in America? Or any other age or in your group? How about girls? How about casual fans? How about people who have biases? How about people who grew up with Michael Jordan? How about people who say, well, everybody else is picking him, it must be true? And how about people who just say, well, you know what? They cherry pick what they want to go by, and then they determine Michael Jordan is the greatest. And I could give you more examples, but you get the point. The point is, a lot of people pick Michael Jordan for a lot of questionable reasons, but what you guys go is, well, there must be something right about them.
Well, let me make this clear from my point of view.
All right.
Right? I'm looking at what the man accomplished in the NBA.
Okay.
Right? With the Bulls, of course.
Okay.
I'm looking at the different things he did for the NBA.
Oh, not the Washington Wizards? You don't count those years?
Of course, absolutely. At 40 years old, doing what he did, absolutely.
I just want to make sure because you said with the Bulls. I want to make sure. You know, a lot of Michael Jordan fans don't count those years. You know that.
I'm talking about Michael Jordan's whole career.
Okay.
For me, people that sit here and try to take away from what he did before they won their first championship, what he did in Washington, what he did as in college. I'm talking internationally. I'm talking about the whole kit and caboodle.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, I remember that the Truman Show used that line, the whole kit and caboodle.
The whole kit and caboodle, man.
Yeah, nice.
The guy, when he came into the league, he came in as a whirlwind. He came in, he was doing things at his position that wasn't being done. Now you can sit up here and nitpick and say, well, this player was doing that. Don't get caught up on the words. Let me just get this out real quick. You can nitpick on that all you want to. That doesn't really change anything.
I'm not really getting caught up. I'm just going by what you say. Nitpick? You think I'm nitpicking?
Absolutely.
Or anyone? Or people in general who just are nitpicking?
Of course they nitpick. Yes, you nitpick people at this level.
Well, you know what? You can never lose. You set things up where you will always win, because if they go by what you say, you win, and if they question it, it's nitpicking, so you win.
I can't lose anyway. We're talking about Michael Jordan, man.
No, you can lose, and very badly, actually. Everything you said about Michael Jordan, whirlwind coming in and doing what he did and all that, he wasn't the only guy who did these things. And even if you disagree, there are other people who did more than him anyway. There's none of this proves he's the greatest.
Never said he was the only player.
Well, then what's the point of elevating him for those things?
Because he was the only player who came in '84 as a shooting guard in the time of the NBA when a shooting guard wasn't the cornerstone of your NBA team.
Wait. That's the criteria? You have to be drafted in 1984 and be a shooting guard and do those things?
No. The era he came into was not set up for a 6'6" shooting guard to be the cornerstone of your franchise.
So who was
that wasn't the case.
So what was Jerry West doing?
Losing in the finals is what he was doing.
See, there you did it again. You went back to acting like a guy wins and loses. I have to point this out to you because every time we bring this up, you go, I'm not saying that. But then I say, no, you play both sides. And that's an example again. You put it on a guy for winning and losing. And what's your excuse for Oscar Robertson and Pete Maravich and all the other players who dominated at the shooting guard position? You're just dismissing everyone.
Okay, let me put it to you like this. Pete Maravich didn't win anything in the NBA.
How is he supposed to win something? One guy doesn't win and lose. You agree with that?
Absolutely. That means he did not change the culture of the team he was on.
How can you say that? You agreed with me earlier that other factors come into play. Now you're putting it on a guy for winning and losing.
Yes, but that's the thing. That was the beauty of Michael Jordan. He was the leader of that team.
Don't you see? You're doing a very classic kind of, I don't know what word to use, so don't like you said, not to make a big deal out of nitpicking.
You're fine, man. Say what you want to say.
But don't make a big deal of this. You're doing a very like cult member kind of thing, like your guy can do no wrong and everyone else just can't measure up to him. Like you can't lose and all that. Like you keep playing this game where you say, I know one guy doesn't win and lose. I know a bunch of factors come into play. And then you keep acting like one guy wins and loses. And other factors that come into play.
I have never sat here and told you that one guy wins or loses championships.
You just said Jerry West he kept losing. You just said Pete Maravich didn't affect his team enough to win. You put it on Michael Jordan for winning. And I could give you more examples, but you get the point.
Did Pistol Pete Maravich, did he win in the NBA?
Is Pete Maravich supposed to win by himself?
No, he's not. But he had teammates, man. He had teams.
Okay,
he was on the
so what happened?
Celtics in the early '80s.
There was a guy who told me that other factors come into play. One guy doesn't win and lose. It's not, you need a good team and all that. That guy, you might know him. He's you. What happened to that guy and all those things?
Nothing happened to him, because the fact of the matter is the very guy we're talking about not only was individually great, he also affected team success.
Everyone does. Don't you see? You're just finding a way to get out of it every time you go in a circle.
But there are degrees to it. And if you can't see the degree to which he infected his team or affected his team opposed to other players, I don't know what else to tell you.
No, hold on. Here's what you tell me. First of all, I can see it. But if you think I'm not getting it, you say you don't know what else to tell me, here's what you got to do. It's actually very simple and you'll win. Just show me how you're right factually. Don't tell me about your beliefs. Don't tell me what you think happened. Don't tell me how mesmerizing it was. Don't tell me here are the results. Show me actually what happened. Why was Jerry West losing? Why did Pete Maravich lose? Why did Oscar Robertson lose? And why did Michael Jordan lose? And then tell me why Kareem won and Michael Jordan won and Larry Bird won and when Shaq won. You got to be specific.
Dr. J didn't win until he had Moses Malone. They had other players that came along with him. Oscar Robertson didn't win until he had Lou Alcindor. Then you're talking about, then you're going to go talking about Bird. Well, Bird got on the team, and when he was drafted to the Celtics.
Just to make sure I understand. Are you saying they couldn't win without someone in a good way? Like you're holding, like, hey, no one can do it? Or are you holding it against them like in a negative way?
No. It's called team building, man.
Okay.
You have to have pieces around you.
Okay. And by the way, I also want to point out, even if you find a way to do this, which you're not going to, but I'll let you finish, but even if you find a way, you still have to explain logically how these teams are able to get to the finals. So just because you don't win the ring doesn't mean anything, but because the reason I say it doesn't mean anything, what I meant was, let me clarify, if you're going to say, look, they didn't do it, they didn't win, they didn't have what it takes or whatever, then you have to explain logically, how did they get to the finals? How did they get to the third round? How did they get to the second round? And so on.
I thought we had already covered that. That's, again, that could be injuries, that could be matchups.
So then apply the same logic to when they win and lose.
Absolutely. Okay, you're right.
But you're not doing that.
You're right, but I thought that would have been...
No. I'm agreeing with you that you've acknowledged these things. More than once on this call, you have acknowledged other factors come into play. What I'm saying to you is you're not consistent with that. You change it up where you put it on a guy for winning and losing.
Okay, no one guy wins anything by themselves in a team sport. But what does happen is one player can make the difference between a team losing and winning.
Then by your logic,
particularly in basketball.
Then by your logic, a guy like Wilt Chamberlain should have won every year.
I mean, that's one of the knocks on him, that he couldn't do it.
You know who knocks him the most? You Michael Jordan fans. I've never heard anyone else knock him the most except you guys.
Not at all, because it's for me personally. So I have, Jordan is the number one NBA player. Right behind him for me is Kareem, and right behind him is Bill Russell. And then I have Magic Johnson. That's my top four.
But I don't care about any of that right now. And even if I'm wrong, and it's not mostly Michael Jordan fans who knock Wilt Chamberlain, which I'm not wrong, but let's say I am wrong. It doesn't matter anyway. I'm trying to go by your logic. If a guy can have so much of an impact that he might help his team win, or he might be the reason they lost, by your logic, a guy like Wilt Chamberlain, I say like because there's other guys similar to him, they should be winning every year. If they're not, then you have to explain logically why a guy who does so much can't win. And you can't give me a simple answer like, well, he didn't, he just didn't do it the right way, or he didn't motivate them, or he didn't get people.
I will give you the answer to that. Wilt Chamberlain was never a good leader. He never was, and that's been documented.
So you're doing exactly what I said.
No, sir. Because leadership is part of the criteria, man. It's part of the mix.
Okay, there's a lot of problems with this argument. A lot. So I'm going to try to keep it simple.
Yeah, I know. There are quite a few problems with it. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you know. That's actually. That's why I can't figure you out sometimes. You know these things, but then you still drink the Kool-Aid, or in this case, the Gatorade. So like.
Sarcasm is missed in this particular point. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about. You're telling me about Wilt Chamberlain. There's a reason why Wilt Chamberlain
Oh, you weren't being
wasn't
serious.
happening.
You weren't being serious. You were being sarcastic.
Oh, I was definitely being sarcastic. Oh,
Oh, that's too bad. I had hope that you were getting it. Okay, never mind.
No, don't have hopes. I'm a Jordan fan, remember? Don't have any hopes.
All right, let's keep it this. I'll keep it simple. So I'll try. There's so many things to bring up here, but I'll keep it simple. First of all, many people think Michael Jordan was a terrible leader. So if you're going to give this leadership argument, he's a terrible leader. Secondly, if you're going to say Wilt Chamberlain was not a good leader, you can make the case that Michael Jordan was worse. Third, you're assuming he wasn't a good leader. I don't know. Like you said earlier, you weren't there.
Absolutely.
You haven't gone to his games, obviously. You haven't played all his games and all that. You don't know that he wasn't a good leader. So when you make the claim he wasn't, I'd like to know what your proof is. And last thing, if he wasn't a good leader, how did he win rings? How did he get to the final? How did he have teams that did good and so on?
Yes. Okay. So he won his championships when he had a good wing player. He had better teammates. Because the years that he didn't win championships, he was putting up historic numbers. When he stepped back and wasn't putting up those numbers and had better teammates, he won.
Not true.
And Bill Russell wasn't in his way as much.
Not true.
Because the one time he lost to a banged up.
I don't even know. First of all, he won in Philadelphia. So what you're talking about when he sacrificed his numbers in like Los Angeles and all that, he won in Philadelphia. Secondly, when you say he sacrificed his game, that was just the scoring. The other numbers weren't sacrificed. And when you say his numbers weren't as historic or whatever you said, I don't have the exact words. Again, you're talking about.
I never said they weren't historic.
Whatever it was. Okay, fine. Whatever it was. They weren't as good.
They weren't as impactful.
Okay, fine. Impactful. That's not even true, by the way. But if you want to believe that, I don't accept that. But if you want to believe they weren't as impactful, I'd like to know how do you know they weren't as impactful? And secondly,
he didn't win, man. He didn't win. His teams didn't win.
Again, you're going back to one guy winning and losing. See, you did it again.
I said his teams did not win. I didn't say Wilt Chamberlain didn't win.
In the beginning, you said he didn't win. So maybe you changed.
Fine. Maybe I misspoke. His team did not win.
And if his team didn't win, why are you questioning him?
Yes.
And the other thing you said, Bill Russell really wasn't in his way and all that. That's not true. In fact, his team beat Bill Russell's team.
I know they did, but Bill Russell and the Celtics stopped him numerous times.
Okay, so
is
that his fault?
He happened to play. He played in an era where there was no player movement, and the Boston Celtics just had a stacked team, man. So I'm not knocking them for that.
Everyone who wins has a stacked team except Michael Jordan. You are knocking them. You are knocking them.
The 2011 Dallas Mavericks weren't a stacked team. The 04 Pistons weren't a stacked team.
Like I said, like you said earlier, I'm being sarcastic. You know what I'm saying.
I know.
You guys paint this picture. I've seen it a million times with other people, and you've done it too a million times, where you act like Michael Jordan had no All-Stars, no Hall of Famers, no help. I know you didn't say those exact words. You know what I'm saying. It's a pattern. He didn't have a stacked team, but everybody else who won had All-Stars, Hall of Famers, help, and a stacked team. And also every era. Another thing you guys do, and you've kind of done this too. You didn't. I don't know for sure if you think this about every era, but I got clues that you pretty much think this about every era. Every era is questioned except Michael Jordan's era.
I don't question the 2000s. And the only thing, or even the 10s for that matter. The only thing I question.
Hold on. You talked about today's NBA in a questionable way. What's the difference between today's NBA and the 2010s?
The game is not even remotely as competitive or physical as it was back in the 2000s.
How about 2000? Well, no, I didn't say 90s. That's a slippery thing you did there. We're talking about 2000s. So what's the difference between 2010s and today's NBA? Some of the same players played in the NBA in the 2010s and today.
Sure. Yes, they have. But some of the rules have been relaxed, and the way they're calling games has changed a lot too.
Okay. But the changes have not been that big from 2010s to today. And if I'm wrong, if you're going to say I am, because most people say, oh, it's a big difference. How come the statistics for the players are pretty much the same? How come no players are saying, man, it's super easier now, or man, it's super harder, or man, it's so different than they're just playing 1 year to the next year. It's the same league.
The three top players in the NBA from Europe have come out numerous times and talked about how hard it is to play in the summer league in Europe compared to the NBA during regular season.
Okay, but
these are the three best players, and two of them aren't even that athletic.
Aside from
the game is different.
Aside from the fact that's a different topic, that's only three guys.
That's the three biggest stars from Europe in the game. Matter of fact, you can kind of say they're almost the face of the NBA at this point.
So aside from again, it's a different topic. We're talking about the difference in 2010s and today. But I want to point out something. This is a different topic. I'm going to bring up just to show you you're inconsistent. If you want to go by what people think, including players, why don't you go by what Michael Jordan thinks and the majority of Hall of Famers think and the majority of coaches think then?
Because I think Michael Jordan is the greatest player.
Well, at least you're honest.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
But that's not really.
But you've known that from the very beginning, and nothing you and I have talked about is you haven't given me anything to change my mind about that.
I believe you that you believe that. I know, but
yes.
I've given you lots of things actually, but you're not changing your mind because you're so good. When you tell me,
given me a lot.
When you tell me he's your favorite. That's fine that you acknowledge that, but it doesn't prove why you're right on the topic. You're just dismissing everything, saying, "Well, he's my favorite." So I appreciate that you're being honest. That's good, but it doesn't really solve the issue and prove how you're right. Then, and by the way, to the NBA and the Michael Jordan 1980s and 1990s, this is something else I love telling Michael Jordan fans. It's always fun giving them information. Everything they said about today's NBA, except for one thing, which I'll tell you what that is later. They said in the 1980s and 1990s and 2000s. Then.
Of course.
So why do you guys always do this where you point out how bad today's NBA is, and you didn't do it that much, but you still kind of did it, and you point out to what people think, the three guys, but you guys don't ever sit back and say, wait a minute, they did the same things back then, and it was just as bad or worse when they did it.
But they weren't.
There was only one difference. There was only one difference. Oh, was that?
They weren't doing the same things back then that they're doing now.
I thought you agreed that they were saying the same things back then.
No, I didn't say saying. I said they weren't doing. The style of play was completely different back then.
But that's not the argument. The stuff that they say about today's NBA being soft, being boring, they scored too many points, they don't have good fundamentals, they're not good leaders.
They didn't say that about the 90s.
Oh, no, they did. And there's evidence of this. There is. And by the way, if I'm wrong, then you have to explain. Well, you don't have to, but it'd be nice. You have to explain to me, if you want to, obviously, how come the only people who tell me that never happened to that level are you, Michael Jordan fans? How come I can't find anyone else agreeing with this?
I'm not the only one, because there's plenty of players on these interviews you can watch who played back in that era who have come out and said that the game today is nothing.
They do. I said Michael Jordan fans. Ask me if you want to talk about Charles Barkley and you want to talk about Allen Iverson and Kevin Garnett and all that. Go find out who they pick. Go find out whatever they play in. They're all
I'm talking about players that played in that era, and this is not even about the Michael Jordan thing. They're talking about comparing the era they played in compared to how easy and soft, how more soft it is today.
There's a guy who would disagree. He's one of your favorite players, Larry Bird.
Fantastic. And I've heard him come up there and say things about it, and I get that, and I understand that.
But you're going to try to figure out a way to tell me why, when it helps your arguments, you go by these guys, but when it goes against you, you don't go by these guys.
Do you know why I have no problem with Larry Bird saying that? Because Larry Bird is his own man. He's got his own thoughts.
So why do you cherry pick? Person. No, that was one guy, but I brought him up as an example because you really like him. So I want to show how you're not being fair. Yes. But that's one guy. I can name you more guys. But by the way, it doesn't even matter what they say anyway. It doesn't even matter anyway because that doesn't make them right or wrong. But if you're gonna, and also I want to make sure this is something. Well, you say absolutely, but you like to go by what people think then. But also I want to bring out one more thing. If you want to give me this point that, hey, this is what they're saying about back then, and this is what they're saying today, that works both ways. What do you think today's players say about today's NBA and back then?
Oh, I hear it all the time. Yeah, I get that.
So why does it count for when it helps you, but it doesn't count when it goes against you?
I never said it doesn't count or it does count. I'm just telling you what they said between the two eras.
No.
And I am repping for that era because that is where, for me, the greatest player played at.
Number one, I know you never said those things. I know it, but you're still implying it. You're painting a picture where you say, look, players back then said how tough it was back then and how soft it is today. So you're trying to imply that. And secondly, so also, why aren't you, the question remains, why don't you do it the same way for today's players who say today's NBA is tougher and more, whatever, it's more physical, but back then it wasn't as skilled, it was softer. And when I ask you why, one of your answers is, because you give me two answers that don't make sense. It has the guy that you think is the greatest. That's not a good answer. And then that's the time you're repping. That's not a good answer.
The NBA players today, their famous line is, the game is harder now because there's more skilled players. Right?
That's one of them.
You've heard them say that.
That's one of them.
Here's the point with that. It's very hard to determine how skilled a player is when he's meeting minimal resistance. The way the rules are set up in the NBA right now, you have how many players you have that are averaging 30 points a game, or every time you turn the TV on, somebody's got 40 or 50 points.
I was saying you could have said the same thing in the 1980s and 1990s.
I'm talking about different players, not the usual suspects. You're talking about a guy who just came into the game. You don't even know who this guy is or where he's from.
You can find lots of guys like that.
Sure, you can, but it's more common now. We can agree on that.
You'd have to prove that to me. We don't agree on that. I'm asking you to have an open mind. Everything you're saying. Well, hold on. Everything you're telling me is what the media says over and over and over and over. One second. I know you're going to say you're not going by the media, and okay, you're saying they're not saying that. You're going to say you grew up, you know. If you really grew up in those times, and you know, or you're not, okay, what are you going to say? Go ahead.
I'm going to tell you, man, the pace of the game is different now. The average score of the NBA is like 115 points. Back then it was 85 and 90.
We're not even talking about that. That doesn't mean they're soft or they're not as physical or they're not as skilled or anything like that.
We're going to have to agree to disagree on that.
No, we're not going to agree to disagree. You just don't have an answer, so you're going to say we're going to agree to disagree.
I do have an answer. I mean, all you have to do is watch the games.
Okay. So all the people from your time who say that that's a bunch of BS, are they not watching the games?
Some of them are, I would assume.
Okay. Well, why would you not assume that they're all watching the games?
Well, I don't think all of them are interested in watching.
Don't you notice a pattern? You're going by a lot of guessing and beliefs and assumptions and opinions.
So are you.
No, I'm not. You can't say so am I. Most of this call is you bringing up something, me following up. I'm not even.
Can you acknowledge to me right now that the pace of the game is faster now than it was back in the 90s?
Before I answer that, and I'm going to answer. Don't worry. I'm going to answer. Don't worry. I just want to point out, when you said so am I haven't told you where I rank players. I haven't told you what eras I rank. I haven't told you what eras I like or anything. You're doing these things, so you can't say to me, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not. I'm just following up to your points. Okay.
Fine. I stipulate. You win that one. Let's move on. What I'm asking you now is, if the pace of play is different now.
I got more, because there was some other things you said previously. We got to address these things. Okay. When you talked about the rule changes, they made plenty of BS rule changes in the 1980s and 1990s, and they did it mostly. I didn't say always, okay? I didn't say always, but they did it mostly for Michael Jordan, and they wanted to open up scoring and make it easier for the smaller guy and make it harder for the bigger guy. And they were trying to make the NBA like FIBA, having FIBA rules, and they were trying to take out the physical play, and they were trying to take out the defense, and there were people on the Chicago Bulls who admitted these things. And your boy Larry Bird admitted these things. And I'm not saying he admitted all these things. I'm not saying everybody admitted all these things. I'm saying lots of people admitted some of these things. Magic Johnson admitted these things and so on. Now, you say yes and absolutely, and that's great. But then you're the same guy who makes it seem like, I'm going to summarize it simply, okay? You make it seem like today's NBA is questionable, back then was better, most of the players agree with you, and so on.
The NBA was more physical, there was more resistance, and it was more competitive in the 90s. You can't argue that. And if you want to argue that, you feel free to do it. But I watch the games now just like I watched them then. The games now are not as competitive. The game is more wide open. There's not as much resistance. And you got different players on each team scoring 30 points. And that wasn't happening.
Okay, so the game was more physical. It was more competitive. There was less spacing and all that. And your reason is you watch the games.
Yes, we all watch the games.
Okay,
And plus,
we all don't agree with these things.
and that's fine. I'm not.
No, it's not fine. It's not fine. If you're
It
arguing,
is.
it's not no
It
because
is.
if you say it's fine, that's good in a way. That means you don't really care too much. But I want to know logically if you're saying these things are true. I have two questions. One, why don't you prove each of these things are true? And two, how do you explain that other people watch the games and they don't agree?
The same way two people can hear the same thing and tell you a different thing from that same
There's a
quote.
difference. That's an opinion. So no one's right or wrong. So if you say, here's a song, if you say, here's a song, do you like the song? Someone says yes,
Yes.
another guy says no. If you play it for more than one person, that's an opinion. No one's right or wrong.
Yes.
But when you say that, hey, it was more physical, they were more skilled. What were the other ones? They were not as soft and all that. These are not opinions. These are claims. How do you know these
They are
things are
claims.
true?
Because
You watch the
again,
games.
the pace, not only watching the games, I mean the pace of play and the statistics on the different eras are online in black and white for you to see.
Okay, hang on. I'm not disputing the statistics. How does the statistics, if you're saying that's one of your arguments, I know you have more, but I'm just asking on this one, how does that mean that it was less soft, it was more physical, it was more skilled and all that?
Because you had actual post players back then.
Hey, please subscribe. And if you disagree with me on something, you can go on my program and show me your facts on whatever you disagree on. If you want to go on, let's set it up. Send me an email. The email is right there in the description section. Thank you.